Hold on, guys. All right, go ahead, go ahead.
You can go.
The special meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, June 15th, 2020 will be called to order at a couple of minutes past 7. At this time, would everybody sit for Alderman Gay's invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
This was unexpected. Amen.
Move on to the next order of business.
No, seriously. God, I ask that you just bless all of our minds as we come together and try to, work together on a balanced budget. And as we do the work that we believe you assigned us and put us here to do. I ask that you bless the families that watch us and that we preside over. I ask that you bless those who patrol and protect our streets, our fire department, our officers as they go through difficult times. And I ask that you just bless us as a city and guide us into a better path. Amen.
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 Right.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty,
and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Here.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Here.
Alderman Payon.
Here.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles.
Here.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Present.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Present.
Alderman Gay.
Here.
Alderman Savage.
Present.
Alderman Arnett.
Here.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the first item on the agenda.
Yes, sir. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
This time I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez. Alderman Gay. Alderman Savage.
Aye.
Alderman Arnett.
Aye.
Alderwoman Tierney.
Aye.
Alderman Payon.
Aye.
Alderman Pendell Charles.
Aye.
And the agenda has been approved.
Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you have a proclamation marking Juneteenth.
I think I'm going to go on to that in my reports, so we could go on to the next thing.
Okay.
That is next.
Mr. Lyles, you've muted.
Sorry. The next item on the agenda is petition, reports, and communications, beginning with update from the mayor.
Good evening. Hope that everyone is doing well and staying healthy. I have a few things to highlight tonight. Again, I want to thank all the members of the council and all of the city staff for being available to get us through this budget process. I thank the department heads, each one of you, for helping me prioritize expenditures and make necessary reductions to fit where we are in the budget, given the circumstances. This isn't easy. It feels like everyone is walking away a little bit unhappy. As I said before, Annapolis is a resilient city and we will bounce back. This Friday is the 19th of June. In many areas of the country, this day is commemorated as Juneteenth, the day the last enslaved people were informed of emancipation. Tonight, I would like to issue a proclamation declaring June 19th Freedom Day in the city of Annapolis. The proclamation reads, whereas the city of Annapolis acknowledges the emancipation of enslaved African Americans, and whereas in the city of Annapolis, the history of enslaved peoples is known to have contributed in free labor to agriculture, trade, and domestic work that built this historic city. And whereas the city of Annapolis chooses to commemorate the influence of African American culture and recognizes Juneteenth to ensure that we do not forget the contributions that enslaved African Americans made through blood, sweat, tears, and bondage to this nation. And whereas in a typical year, Juneteenth is commemorated with parades, cookouts, events, and family reunions in communities across the country to mark that date that the last enslaved people in America learned of their freedom. And whereas the City of Annapolis City Dock was named in 2019 as a UNESCO Site of Memory, Slave Route Project, and is recognized as one of at least 72 ports of entry where enslaved persons were brought to North America between 1619 and in Maryland, 1774. And whereas Harriet Tubman was born an enslaved person in 1822 in Talbot County, Maryland, and escaped her life of servitude, then led countless souls to freedom on the Underground Railroad. And a museum dedicated to her story is located 1 hour drive from the city of Annapolis. All residents are encouraged to visit and learn our history. And whereas enslaved persons in the state of Maryland were not affected by the September 22, 1862 signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared all slaves in Southern Confederate states to be free on January 1, 1863. And whereas a Maryland new state constitution was passed on November 1, 1864, prohibiting the practice of slavery in the state. And whereas the last remaining enslaved peoples in the United States got word of emancipation on June 19th, 1965 in Texas. And whereas on May 14th, 2014, Maryland became the 43rd state to recognize Juneteenth as a national freedom day. Be it further resolved that the city of Annapolis does hereby honor the 19th day of June as a day to commemorate America's second Independence Day. Now, therefore, I, Gavin Buckley, Mayor of the City of Annapolis, Maryland, do hereby proclaim June 19th as Annapolis Freedom Day in the City of Annapolis. Thank you. Let's carry on with the meeting. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
We're still in petition reports and communications. Any other reports? If not, written testimony from the general public is the next item.
I can't hear him. We can't hear you, City Attorney.
I just turned it all the way up. Is that better?
Not much.
A little bit lower, Mike.
Can you hear me now?
Still low, but.
I hear you just fine, Mike.
Okay, because I'm almost all the way up.
Okay.
The next item is written testimony from the general public, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, did anybody have any reports before we go forward? Put your hand up if anyone does. Okay. We have written testimony and general comments from the following persons. Susan Ebbett, 947 Wind Whisper Lane, Annapolis, Maryland. And Burl Downs, 650 Greenbrier Lane, Annapolis, Maryland. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The next item on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, point of information. Is that public testimony on the budget as amended, and that's only 2 people?
We have further public testimony down down the line.
They're speaking on various items at that point, Alderman Arnett.
Yeah, it is not related to any
The budget.
specific thing on that, Alderman Arnett.
Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, the next item on the agenda is public hearing on 01620 as amended 6/8/2020 annual budget and appropriation and property tax levy.
We received comments from the following people. Bill Downs again, 650 Greenbrier Lane, Annapolis, Maryland, and William Kardash, 1 South Acton Place, Annapolis, Maryland, 21401. I declare the public hearing on 0-1620 amended, closed. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The next item on the agenda is legislative actions, second reader, beginning with 01620 as amended on June 8, 2020, annual budget and appropriation and property tax levy.
Is there a motion to adopt 0-16-20 on second reader? Regina?
We don't have to do that. We're at the point where you're just doing amendments, if there are any additional.
Okay.
Because
so
we
would you
have
start
amendments.
with amendment number 1, Regina? Yeah.
No, we need to start with amendment number 17. The
Okay.
amendments prior to that were adopted at June 6th meeting. I mean,
Okay.
June 8th meeting, I'm sorry.
Okay, we're on amendment number 17. Could someone please move that?
Alderman.
So moved.
Alderman Rodriguez, and second.
Second.
And Jody, do you want to give clarification again on 17?
Yes, amendment number 17 balances the general fund budget in Appendix A to recognize the effects of the amendments that passed last week on Monday. Those are amendments 2, 8, 12, and 14. And it takes the net effect of those budget cuts totaling $135,650 and adds it to the contingency account in finance non-allocated.
Thank you. Alderman Payon.
Do we have copies of these somewhere?
Yeah, you do.
17 has been up on Granicus for a few days.
My iPhone isn't copying it. We ought to have it in the flesh. What is there someplace else where they are? It's not opening on my iPhone.
It'll take me a minute, but I can send it to you.
I would appreciate that.
And follow me.
Never mind, I can't get on the network. Can you send the council members?
Takia's, Jody, Takia's emailing it to the alderperson.
Okay, never mind, Takia's doing it. Okay.
Yep. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to state what I think Amendment 17 does and hope that I have it correct. It essentially recognizes, as Jody just said, the amendments that passed on last Monday, 2, 18, 12, and 14. It accepts the so-called Plan B to bring the budget into balance by moving to the 2% attrition and increasing those freezes from $573,000 to $1 million some odd thousands of dollars, and then as an additional $135,000 of freezes or whatever we're calling them, 2% money.
Could you repeat the amendment numbers that it includes?
It's amendments 2, 8, 12, and 14.
Thank you.
1, 2, 8, and 12, and 14. 1 was just a correction of an error.
Okay, thank you.
What?
Well, I'm sorry, the amendment doesn't address 1 because everything was correct on 1. It's the 4 that were stated.
And I have 6. We have 6 as well. 1, 2, 6, 8, 12, and 14.
Yes.
Okay, that's not what, Amendment 17 does not include 6 in it.
Did 17 affect anything from the OEP amendment? Because it's not listed at the bottom in the description. Hold on. 16 or 12, sorry. 12. Oh, I'm sorry, it is. Sorry, 2, 8, 12, and 14. 12 is in there. That's the OEP amendment. Sorry, my mistake. 8 was replaced then by 14, and Amendment 2 is the Plan B amendment. All reflected here. 12 was the OEP, removing it from the city manager's budget and from planning and zoning and moving it back into its own department.
Okay. 2, 8, 12, and 14. Got it.
2, 8, 12, and 14.
Alderman Tierney?
Yeah, just for
Alderman Annette, had you finished? Sorry. Ross?
No, yes, I think that's what I understood. And 6 is not in it. That's the Truxton Heights drainage amendment.
Yeah, that was a capital amendment. That wouldn't have impacted the operating budget at all.
Right.
So Alderman Tierney?
Yeah, I think it's been resolved. I was just going to address Attorney Michael Lyle's concern about the other amendments, but they didn't affect the budget. So, you know, this one, the way I understand it is this is the one that you're just including the amendments that affected the budget, 2, 8, 12, and 14. And then let me just say that 14 does supersede 8, correct? Jody?
Well, I'm not sure technically. We voted on 8, they passed it, then they reconsidered it and defeated it and voted on 14. So I'm not sure what the term.
I don't know. I call it superseded.
Yeah, one replaced another.
Yeah.
This amendment just incorporates the line items in the ordinance and the appendices that were affected 2 times by different different amendments. So you won't see every line item affected on here, just the ones where there were 2 different strikeouts and replacements. We have to get it to the correct total.
Thank you.
But be that as it may, 17 is what's before you.
Yeah.
We can hear you much better, Attorney Lyles.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, Julian fixed it.
Okay.
Any other discussion on 17? All those in favor with a show of hands, or do you need a roll call, Regina?
It's your preference, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry?
It's your preference. You can do hands or a roll call.
Okay, let's try it with hands. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say no.
No.
That's 2. It's 7-2.
Thank you. Ayes have it. Let's move on to amendment number 18.
What was the vote, Mr. Mayor?
7-2.
Look like 2 against.
Okay, thank you.
Is that right, Regina?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's move on to amendment number 18. The Alderman Gay City Facility Improvement has a lot of sponsors. Can somebody move that, please?
So moved.
Okay, we get a second.
Second.
And do you want to walk us through it, Alderman Gay?
Yeah, so basically, in the city's facility improvements, we've made an amendment to include $150,000 to be used for updates and a study at the Stanton Center. So this was something that I started working on last Monday. I'm grateful that I was able to call Ross up and get some direction on how to handle this issue. Sheila was very helpful, Alderman Payon as well as Mayor Gavin Buckley, and this is kind of what we came up with. So yeah, I just ask that you support it. It's $150,000 and it's needed for the project.
Alderman Savage.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering if you could walk us through exactly where these cuts are coming from. I think it's listed in a later amendment, unless I'm confusing them, but this doesn't seem to say exactly where the cuts are coming from.
So the first part of the amendment goes to Appendix D and changes the description that you see in the page for that project and adds the language about the Stanton Center and what part it will be used for the Stanton Center. And then in the expenditure schedule, it tells you what changes that are going on the page itself, on the capital project page. If you go up to the very top line on amendment number 18, this is...
Oh, 18. I thought we were on 17.
No, different amendment.
18.
We adopted 17.
I think you're already past 17.
Adopted 17.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, so...
How did you vote on 17, Rob?
I saw your hand.
You know, I clicked on the wrong thing. I've got it now. Okay, so this is
$150,000 for the Stanton Center.
Yeah, can you just explain where that's coming from?
Hans.
So what we're doing is adding to the capital budget. We are adding scope to the city facility improvements, which is already in existing projects that makes various improvements to a lot of our different properties. And Alderman Gay has would like to do some improvements on the Stanton Center with this money, but he wanted to add $150,000 to incorporate that. Part of that is for a study, and the rest would be for improvements, although we don't yet know exactly how much the improvements will cost. And so we added the total, we added $150,000 to the total for that project, and we're going to fund it with bonds. The first line of the amendment addresses the ordinance itself, and the rest of those changes, after you see in Appendix D, page 5, change the capital project page that's in the capital project book. And along with this on Granicus, you should have found the replacement page.
Yep, I see it. Thank you.
Alderman Arnett had his hand up, and Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this amendment, but I did want to hear from the city manager and the finance director whether this, it seems to me like it's in the rounding error, but I just wanted to make sure this isn't causing any angst on either of their parts.
Mr. City Manager?
Yeah, no, we're supportive of this. So over about the last 3 or 4 years, we've done a series of projects at Stanton Center. They totaled to about $270,000. There's still needs there. And I also think that there's a need to do a facility study so we can identify all of the requirements to be done on that facility. So what we'll do is we'll focus on a list of things that the Director Trader came up with, including a new shower room, replacement of the basketball court floor, replacement of some additional floor areas, some appliances. But we'll also do that facility study within this $150,000 to identify additional requirements that we may need to fund next year. So this will probably be a continuing thing. It'll be informed by this facility study that we do. And again, the projects that have been completed in the past all came from this same CIP. So it definitely is a required project, so we support it.
Alderman Finlayson was next, then Alderman Paone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, City Manager Gerald, for clarifying this for us. And Alderman Gay, you are to be commended for bringing this forward. I know there was some misinformation out in the community about us defunding the Stanton Center. And, you know, that absolutely was not the truth, but it did bring us to bring our attention back to the Stanton Center. And so this capital improvement plan, improvement to the plan, will even enhance what we were already planning to do. My question is for the city manager. During our meeting last week, we had talked about, and you had said that I guess the shower, the restroom could be done within the budget without, us making any significant changes. Will that still take place, or will that now be coupled in with the $150,000 we're talking about?
So the CIP that we're talking about is funded each year at $500,000. So what I had mentioned was setting aside a smaller amount than the 150 to do that from that 500. I think this is a better approach because, as I mentioned, Director Trader came up with some additional items besides the shower room that need to be done. So we need to address those as well as addressing the study. So I think this is the right amount to get us started. And I think that we'll need additional funding in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Pan.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, what is the total amount that this adds to the, not to the budget, but to the, what am I thinking of? Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's $150,000 to the CIP.
Total. We get all this for $150,000?
Well, it gets us started. So we're going to get some of the work that's required, the shower room and the basketball floor and appliances and some of the other things that the Director Trader addressed, but we also are going to get the facility study done so we know the full scope of requirements.
Thank you. I would like to be added as a sponsor if I'm not already. I know we talked about this very briefly, Alderman Gay, but Stanton Center is near and dear to my heart, and simply wasn't aware that these changes had to be made. As often as I'm there, nobody's ever mentioned them to me, but that doesn't mean they're not needed. I think they are, and I think they're very much needed.
Right, we have, Alderman Pindell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In honor of Juneteenth and while we're talking about Stanton, I have a few things I want to say. Let me start by saying this. No one loves Annapolis more than I do. I've been here for 65 years and I have no plans to move to another city. With that being said, Wally H. Bates High School was a historic African-American school building in Annapolis located on Smithfield Street. It was completed in 1932 and replaced the original Annapolis Colored High School. From what I've been told, the colored school for post-grammar school education for children in Annapolis was the Stanton School here in the Stanton Community Center building. The same Stanton building which was renovated and is now the Stanton Community Center in Annapolis, serving our Annapolis community. Prior to desegregation, Wally H. Bates High School was the only public school in all of Anne Arundel County that African-American students could attend for a secondary level education between 1933 and 1966. Anne Arundel County's African-American high school students from as far north as the Pumphrey community and as far south as Friendship were bused to the Wally H. Bates High School in Annapolis, oftentimes leaving their home to walk to their bus stop in the dark and bad weather and returning to their bus stop and walking home in the dark in the evening in bad weather. There were no more than 4 bus companies to transport all these students, these bus companies being African-American owned and operated. Hence, many of these high school students who lived outside of Annapolis, who were not within walking distance of the school, were not able to participate in any after-school activities, including sports. Along the continuum of this country's civil rights movement, in 1966, Anne Arundel County Public Schools finally was forced to integrate by court order, 12 years after the Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, which declared state laws establishing separate public schools for Black and white students to be unconstitutional. So before 1933 and 1966, when African-American students attended Wally H. Bates, the Stanton School played a very pivotal role in the life of African-Americans in the area. After forced desegregation in 1966, our city schools were not very welcoming, to say the least. Without going into great detail here, this unwelcomeness ran the gamut. from a decades-long guidance counselor telling our African-American students, including me, that we were not college material, to a teacher pronouncing in front of my class that they would not be teaching us African-American students because, quote, I'm prejudiced and I hate Black people, unquote, to protesting to integrate the cheerleading squad and everything else in between. In many other forms, this continues to prevail. While many of my classmates and schoolmates took this guidance counselor's advice to heart, why wouldn't you if your parents did not attend college and the guidance counselor did? In the process, my parents tried their best to restore what little self-confidence that I had at that point. I was determined that I was not going to college since I believed that the work would be too hard. After my parents forced me to go, I found out that I could in fact do the work. However, and most importantly, those classmates and schoolmates who listened to that guidance counselor were not so blessed. They listened to and believed this guidance counselor. And all of those classmates and schoolmates who could have gone to college, could have, and they could have done very well. Well, they didn't. And so now people have perpetually asked me, so why do we have 39,000 residents here and 15 public and subsidized housing communities in Annapolis? One doesn't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out this one. I say this because the Stanton Community Center means more than just a building. It's a beacon. It's a symbol of something that is right, that is here to correct many things that are and have been wrong. Stanton Community Center and other institutions exist all around. There's much more that I could say, especially about my own personal story, but time will not allow. What I will say is this. This is about not only the Stanton Community Center, but it's about decades and generations of people who have been denied. Frankly, no amount of money can fix it, but we can start today, right here and now, to do what needs to be done for those who cannot be blamed for what has happened in the past. This is not just an Annapolis story. Unfortunately, it's a nationwide story. Again, I love Annapolis, and it's like having family. We acknowledge our imperfections, but in the end, we must do what is right and just, and we still must love one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda, for bringing the love. Alderman Gay's got his hand up.
I think we voted. Have we voted on it?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Okay, everyone ready to vote? We have a motion and a second. For the amendment number 18. All those in favour with a show of hands, say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay.
8-1.
Okay, the ayes have it. Let's move on to amendment number 19. It's the Alderman Gay's mobile crisis team. If you could get that on the floor, please, Alderman Gay. Can we get a second?
Second.
Okay, and then if you could elaborate for us, Alderman Gay.
Yeah, so we had brief discussion about this earlier today.
Brief?
It was brief to me.
I can hear it from in, I can hear it from in here.
Well, we had discussion earlier about this topic. I do expect an opposing amendment to come later today. But basically what this is that within the city's budget, we have $110,000 that is right now going to crisis response. As a part of a partnership that we had created with the county to assist in situations when it is necessary for them to assist in the city. And so what I've noticed and what I've talked with Jim Corbin about, who manages the program in the city, is that we could be better at the responses in terms of coordinating with the police department, how the calls are made and how crisis response responds to our communities in domestic violence situations, gun violence situations, just when individuals feel that they need assistance. So right now we don't have anything like that. If crisis response is not called by an officer or by an elected official or someone who can get them to show up. And so what I'd like to do with the $110,000 is use that as an opportunity for the Office of Community Caring or any other office somewhere within the city for us to fund a program similar to that, so that we can take advantage of where we're missing, kind of responding to our community and where the need is most with mental health assistance. That's at the core of so many of our issues within the communities. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I had a chance to talk to Jen Corbin, who runs this program in the in the county. And she's let me know that if this funding is moved, it would not impact our safe station responses because that is something that's funded separately through the county. This is solely for mobile crisis response and responding to calls. I've also talked to briefly to the chief, Major Paul Herman, and we have a meeting set up tomorrow with Sergeant Baden to discuss training that she has had and how she believes, this could be integrated, whether in the Office of Community Caring or as you'll hear in the other amendment within the department. But I think that it's critical that we start to provide resources to our teens and parents who just need assistance. I mean, we know what's up. There has just been decades and years of, attempts at community policing and now is the time to, as they say, go quote unquote radical and make shifts and try new things. Break boundaries if we truly wish to, create some solutions in our communities. I'll ask for support with this. I'm open to definitely taking questions and creating some dialogue behind this because I think it's necessary.
Alderman Annette has had his hand up the whole time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I strongly support two aspects of this, which is that I do think we need to work on improving coordination between our police department and this mobile response unit. And I think Chief Jackson agrees with that as well. And as you know, Sheila and I have been pushing for this Office of Community Caring Services. So I strongly agree with that. I don't think, though, that I would like to take the money away from this mobile response. I think we have other places to find that money, and I'm hoping that'll come up in a later amendment today. So I would rather have this be an and. We do both, not an either or. So I will not be able to vote for this amendment, even though I strongly support Alderman Gay in much of the sentiment behind this, and particularly the need for better coordination between our police officers and the mobile crisis unit, and also for the Office of Community Caring Service. I would just like to take the money for that office elsewhere. I'd like to take it out of the $135,000 additional dollars that we found. And I know Alderwoman Finlayson has been busy working on lining up other grant sources. So I think we need to keep one and make the other happen. And I do agree with Alderman Gay. Again, now is the time to start doing things, new things, different things. The status quo is not working for us. It hasn't been working for us for a long time. We just haven't been brought to the realization that it isn't working for us. And I would like to move forward with proactive actions that start to make change and start to make things working for us.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Alderman Gay, for introducing this, and we had a good discussion on this at the Housing Committee meeting earlier. I definitely support finding the money to contribute towards Office of Community Caring Services, and so we have to make that happen. As I said, now is the time to show that kind of action of being proactive. And I agree with Alderman Arnett that we can make it an and, because the Anne Arundel County Crisis Response Team does does do some very good work. We need more of that, and we definitely need to find a way to eventually bring that into the city. But I think the $135,000 that we saved by passing Amendment 14, or first 8 and then 14, reducing taking the budget from the police and directing that. So I understand, I was speaking with the finance office earlier, and it's already earmarked in order to go into the contingency fund, but we can, what my amendment, which is coming up later, would do is earmark that money, just set the intention for that the money is going to the Office of Caring, Community Caring, because there's no office currently created, so you can't set the money there today. But you can definitely set the intention, is what I understand. But then the council will vote on it eventually. But at least the intention will be, as part of the budget ordinance, that money should be directed to the Office of Community Caring. So that's why I'm not going to be able to support this amendment, because I think we can get the money in and keep the crisis response money with the amendment to come. Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson and then Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I spoke with Alderman Gay today and tried to come up with some additional options for finding the money. Harking back to a few years ago when we had the discussion about supporting the crisis response team, and actually I think a sponsored amendment to dedicate those funds. And so I'm not very comfortable cutting those funds at this point. But on a much bigger issue for me is I see the crisis response team in some form as a step in a different direction as far as community support is concerned. You know, there's much discussion about defunding the police, which I would not support, but doing things differently, I would support. And the crisis response team does things differently. Right now, they're attached to the police department. I don't think they need to be attached to the police department. While they have to communicate so they know where they're most needed, they can be an independent body that will speak to the needs of the community and be able to develop a different kind of relationship with the community. So I would hate to lose what they do at the time when we are moving in, I hope, a different direction to speak to the needs of our community. So I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to support this, Alderman Gay, but you know that I will work with you. And I thank you for trying to bring additional revenue into our Office of Community Caring, because we're going to do this. No matter what it takes, we're going to do this. So thank you.
Alderman Tierney was next, and Alderman Gay.
Thank you. I thought I was going to just agree with what my colleague Alderwoman Finlayson said, but I lost it. I lost her logic when my understanding or my belief is I fully support this, and I fully support that it is going to this contingency bucket and then will be reallocated appropriately. But we are taking the county contract services away. So I agree with Alderwoman Finlayson that I don't think that this affects their autonomy. And I don't know if Alderman Gay has researched that or what, but on that basis, I think I would fully support this. In fact, I think I'm co-sponsoring it, that I think it's a win-win in the sense that, again, I think that they're not going to ignore a situation in the city because of this. And if I'm wrong, I'd like to be corrected, but that's what I just wanted to add.
Just to respond to Ellie quickly. So they won't ignore safe station requests or when there's a opioid intervention needed, they won't ignore those requests. Mobile crisis response, so like mental health assistance at a scene, that would then be left up to the city to take over. So that's how that would, kind of balance out. But to, just kind of, I guess, wrap things up here, I think it was important that we had this conversation in terms of talking about which direction we'd like to take things in. I'm fully in support of pulling my next amendment, which was actually giving organizations and our mayor's staff, the African-American liaison and Hispanic liaison, funding from the original or from the $135,000 we had taken previously. I'll pull that so that this can go to the community caring, because I completely agree with that, and I think it's important, and I'll support Alderman Rodriguez's amendment later tonight to make that happen. But I still worry, with this funding, $110,000 is a lot to pay out to someone, especially if you are not getting the expected results. And that's not on crisis response at all. That's just on the, again, misstep in communication. And so with the amendment that'll come up, or I don't know where we go from here, because I don't know if we continue to pay the $110,000 and we don't get what we hope to get out of it is, an increase in response times and effectiveness in our communities. How do how do we monitor that? What is our goal? I'm not sure if the police department currently takes statistics on encounters with crisis response. So that has to be monitored in some way so that we know that the mental health needs of our community are being met. Otherwise, we have just paid $110,000 and we continue to have that lapse. So yeah, I would definitely support using this funding in some way it has to go back to the communities. I mean, it just has to. And I'm willing to come up with other multiple amendments to figure out that way. But I don't know. We'll find ourselves back here. But thank you, guys.
Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I find myself almost in complete agreement with Alderman Gay. I do think in our so-called brief conversation, the chief did hear us loud and clear. We do want to have better performance in terms of police coordinating with this mobile response team. I think it's not nearly enough money. We're going to have more. I can't help but believe that the events of recent months have generated an even bigger need for this kind of psychological help for the community, and particularly for the community that is most affected. And I do look forward, although I can't find them anywhere, for amendments from Alderwoman Pendle Charles and I assume from Alderman Rodriguez. And I'm looking forward to when we get those.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little historical context when it comes to the crisis response team. Either was 2 or 3 years ago when Mr. Andrews was our city manager. I was getting information basically from folks on the street who was saying that we weren't getting the response that we needed when it came to crisis response. And it's not their fault at all. Some of what was happening was if they had a call with the county and had a call with the city simultaneously, they were of course going to the county because that's where their funding was coming from. We had no skin in the game. So I asked Mr. Andrews if we could put some money in the budget immediately to rectify that, and he did. I think it was 120 at the time. And so therefore, we had some skin in the game and we had a seat at the table. So that's how we got to crisis response. They're very well known, nationally recognized. And so is there something wrong, Alderwoman Finlayson?
I have a different recollection of a different administration, but you go right on.
No, I went to Tom Andrews, I remember. But anyway.
It was during Josh's.
So anyhow. Oh, okay. Well, I wasn't here then. Okay. but I know I went to Mr. Andrews when he was here. But anyway, so I have a little different take on all this. I think we all want to get to the same place. And I guess some of it comes from the fact that I work with police officers for 20 and a half years. And so my thought is that what I call braid public safety with public service. And I sent everyone around a position paper last evening late for all of you to take a look at regarding what I saw it. And I saw it as the police as well as the clinicians working together within the police department. A lot of reason basically is they each can learn from one another. We have police officers who probably have some hidden talents, who could very well lend those talents to those that are in the community. This is, of course, what we're seeing the past couple of weeks is a shock to the system to many. And it can be frightening for some. But my thing is let's look at the resources that we have the officers respond and co-respond with the clinicians within the police department, because therefore we're making better officers because they can see the other side. What I did mention to Alderman Gay on Saturday, we had a lengthy conversation and he was very in favor of this, but as we go along, we see other things, we do other things, this would be a pilot program for a year from implementation. If it isn't working, then we can use another program. But my thing is not to discard something. I like what Alderman Arnett said today at Housing and Human Welfare. It doesn't have to be an either or, it can be an and. And I think we need to find a structure where we can do an and, where we have the one office, but also have the braiding of the services within the police department. I think it behooves all of us. We want better officers. And I don't like the fact, and I don't really want to see the fact that we akin ourselves to other police departments within other communities all over the country. We are different. Every police department is different. And we've had different experiences. And I just kind of laid out some of that a few minutes ago. But we want to be unique and different because we are unique and different. And we don't have to follow what everyone else does. We have to look at what we have here. Thank goodness we've come a long way over the 153 years that we've had a police department here. We just honored our former police chief with naming the building. So there are many things that we come a long way with. We went out last year, had 4 forums, asked people what they wanted in a police chief. Chief Jackson was chosen. His resume was impeccable. He has sociology background. And so we are, as far as I'm concerned, we're moving in the right direction. As I said today at the meeting, call me Pollyanna. I'm going to look at the glass being half full. I'm not going to be dejected or rejected, but I think we need to look at this from a situation, from our own standpoint, from our own experiences and opportunities. We've all had them here in Annapolis. And so we want to braid these responsibilities. We want to have a situation that can be beneficial for everyone. And we all can learn from each other. And that's how I see this whole thing. But way back 2 years ago, yes, I was looking at an independent office, the Office of Human Resources and Violence Prevention. Dr. Knowledge came along. We talked about the mobile wellness unit, mobile wellness mobile. That's going to go from community to community and doing the work. So we can pull all of that together. I see a lot of potential in what we want to do. So that's but I would ask if we can take that position paper that I prepared and make it part of the record as far as this city council meeting is concerned. Thank you very much.
Alderman Gay.
Yeah, so I'm confused. So you are introducing an amendment later. So I'm confused because
Well, I can understand your confusion because I wasn't aware that you were going to pull yours tonight because I was ready to vote on it. So I guess I'm going to have to make some adjustments as well. I think what we all need to do is kind of pull together and determine what exactly we want to do and come up with pretty much one amendment as to what we want to do. If we want to do the pilot program, if we want to do the CARES, if we want to do both. I think I haven't seen Alderman Rodriguez's amendments yet, but I think tonight we aren't at that point because, like I said, I didn't know you were going to pull it. But since you are, that kind of changes the whole dynamic. I think for everyone on the council.
No, I didn't pull anything.
I thought, and you said you're going to pull the second one, right?
Oh well, that's
you said you're going to pull.
That's a completely different group of funding. That's not in reference to this 110,000 for mobile crisis at all. That's about something else.
So Alderman Gay, just for clarification,
it was all part of the whole package. I thought it was part of the entire package of what we're talking about.
No, 19 is specific to the $110,000 from the police department contract services.
Right, but I was kind of bundling them together in my own mind, so that's why I thought that it was all part of the entire package.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't. That was we were misconfused there.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole package of what we're trying to do as far as community outreach is concerned. That was my understanding.
So, Alderman Gay, just for clarification, if this gets voted down at 19, you are going to pull 20. You'd said that. Is that right? And then for anyone, just to give you a summary of Alderman Rodriguez.
Yeah, but I'll still discuss 20 though. Yeah.
Alderman Rodriguez is allocating $140,000 to the Office of Community Caring. So that would be potentially a funding source for some of these ideas. Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm beginning to realize I might not properly have understood Amendment 19. So let me just check with Dewan. Part of this amendment is to take the money out of police, but keep it as going to the, well, we need to have somebody turn off their mute. I'm getting terrible echo. So the $110,000 would go out of police, but would stay going towards the county mobile crisis team. It would just be in the contingency account. And
no. So in what Rhonda was talking about was we had two separate amendments. So my amendment would have taken the $110,000 and moved it to contingency so that the Office of Community Caring could then use it to get social worker or mental health expert or whatever to operate in the communities. Hers was to, her amendment, or what would be the counter to mine's, would be to take $10,000 to continue to contract with, God, I'm blanking, with crisis response, and then to take $100,000 and use that within the police department to hire the social worker / mental health expert. So same groups of money, we just had two ending points. Mine's would have put the expert in the community caring office. Hers would have put it under the police department.
So, and I'm glad to see you're having blank moments like I do as a senior citizen, but
it's the stress you put me through. I feel 50.
Well, so I am a little confused now, and I'm trying to rethink my position. I really do want to keep funding for this mobile crisis response team. I don't necessarily think it has to be in the police budget, although it doesn't bother me to be there. I do want to see an Office of Community Caring contingency fund established, but we don't have an Office of Community Caring yet. So it would have to be earmarked, as Mark said, earmarked so that we know that once we get the legislation in place, that's where X amount of dollars are going to go. So I'm trying to figure out how we get from point A to the final point here. How do we keep having the mobile crisis services even if they're no longer, you made a powerful statement at the community housing and community welfare. We don't want people showing up with badges and uniforms necessarily when people are in crisis, but we do want people showing up when people are in crisis. Frankly, I don't care how they get there. I just want to be sure they get there and that they're providing consolation and support. So I'm not even really all that concerned about where this 110,000 is showing up in the budget. If it comes out of police but stays someplace so that it finds its way to the mobile crisis. I do care about also getting the money so that we can start our own. And I do see the Office of Community Caring Services as much broader eventually than just crisis intervention. I see it as a way that we can start helping people get out of their dead-end situation. That's probably not the best word, but their desperate situation, and be able to move forward and out. And I think that's much bigger than just you've suffered a catastrophic, like a murder in the family sort of thing, and bigger. And in fact, I'm getting pushback from some in my community saying that we're starting a huge new bureaucracy. My thinking on that is we can't keep doing things the same way and expect a different outcome. We have to lend a helping hand. We have to get people out of desperate straits and on the path to success. And so I want to see both of these things happen. I want to see this immediate response in crisis, but I also want to see a longer-term investment in the community to get them out of a long-term crisis and into a better place. So, I am now confused. I don't know how I'm going to vote on 19.
Before I go to Alderman Rodriguez and Alderman Savage, who had their hands up first, I'm going to get some clarification from Jody. City Manager David Gerald had his hand up as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a clarification on how this progresses. So whatever you do tonight, and you set money aside in the contingency account. We only have one contingency account. So if money goes there and you have an idea that it's going to go for these purposes, later we'll take another ordinance to take the money out of there and move it to a new department or a new office or whatever you set up in the city. Once we decide how it's going to be organized, we would take the money out of contingency and put it in there for a budget, to establish a budget. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, and I was just going to say the same basic things. To simplify the discussion tonight, you don't have to decide anything that's going to contingency. Even if you earmark it, that's meaningless right now, because you're going to have to decide later through an ordinance what that gets applied to. So maybe you just say, this is going to contingency. We have this concept that we want it to go for these purposes, and then we can take up that discussion when that ordinance comes forward. To actually reapply the money that's in the contingency to those specific uses. That's a discussion that's going to happen later anyway. So maybe that just simplifies tonight, just a suggestion.
So we've got Alderman Rodriguez and Alderman Savage and Alderwoman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, to answer Alderman Arnett's question, how do we get there? I think we can in practice get there with the mayor's amendment 17, like in practice, David just mentioned, as the city general just mentioned. I do think though, however, that it's important to set, so even if it's a symbolic intention earmarked as part of the ordinance, that this money we have the intention to reserve it for this, not even regardless of whether it has to be passed later. I do think that is extremely important. And that's what my amendment does, per the discussion with Alderman Gay and everyone from the Housing Committee earlier, and Alderman Finlayson and Alderman Arnett. So I think I agree. We keep the 110,000 even right now as part of the Annapolis Police Department's contract services for the Anne Arundel County's crisis response team. They do some good work. I think there needs to be their issue, maybe a management issue in terms of the coordination between the police department and the crisis response to make sure we're getting more attention. I also understand the officer who's the liaison into that group part of their responsibility is also to share with the city best practices and be as a guide and so forth, as Alderman Pindell-Charles mentioned earlier. So you keep that in the police relationship, and at the same time, you earmark the $135,000 that we saved from the police department during last Monday's meeting, and we match that, and we earmark that, even if it's just the intention right now, but we make it official that that's going for the Office of Community Caring Services, and that scope and mission will need to be further defined, but at least it's there. So that's my suggestion.
Alderman Savage, next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, Alderman Gay, for leading on this and for the explanation. I do like, now that you've mentioned it, the idea of making sure this money does go towards something like a community services department. Because I do think, and I think your approach of putting it in the contingency fund, as the city manager, Gerald, said, does allow us to have that conversation, because we don't have to decide tonight, but it gives us the flexibility. And putting it in the police department would not necessarily give us as much flexibility, at least. So I think, but I do think we need to have a larger discussion about a lot of this. So, and I know I've said this before, but I think a lot of our traditional public safety departments are rather bloated when it comes to the money, right, and the portion of our services that they make up, portion of our budget. And I think we really need to start thinking about a new model of what public safety means, something that's less reactive and more proactive and preventative. I really think we need to avoid and prevent crises, not simply respond to them. And I think this is a really great first step, Alderman. So thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Finlayson was next, then Alderman Tierney, then Alderwoman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jody answered one of my questions, but Alderman Gay, the second question, for clarification, is your intent to keep the function of the crisis response team, but simply put them in the Office of Community Caring? Or is it to redo their function, their purpose, their objective?
Miss, exactly as you mentioned it at first, it is to keep the same exact functions of the crisis response, but it would just be under a different department. That's all.
You know, that makes a significant difference. So thank you for clarifying that.
Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I said this at the previous meeting today. I think this is where we get ourselves in trouble, and we try to pigeonhole where we're going to spend this tonight. I don't believe we'll come to an agreement, and I don't want to lose this opportunity to take that money and put it in a contingency fund, and that's the way I understand it. I think we can make a point to Alderman Rodriguez's point that, yeah, if we add to it, we are taking those vacant police positions. The public will need to hear that. But I don't think we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed, the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. I don't even know what the police have in their budget right now for social work and community policing, et cetera. And there's a lot of innuendos. I mean, if you ask the police to collect data on response time, they may have to hire a data analyst. I don't know that stuff. So I mean, my strong suggestion is we just put a dollar figure to this. I think we're making a statement, which is important, and we need to do more than make a statement, and we will in a subsequent ordinance, as our city manager said. And I think that would be the smartest way to do this. Otherwise, we're just going to pigeonhole ourselves, and we're going to find an error later. And so I would, I think I need to add the two amendments together to get the vacant positions. But that is what I would strongly recommend.
Alderman Pindell-Charles and Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got a couple of questions. We're talking about 110,000 on one side. And Mr. Gerald, we're talking about 135 on another side. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the right number. So there's two different things, right? We have the money that's above, as part of the budget right now, that's above the expenditure number, That's one pot of money. And then there's the additional 110 that's being proposed to be reduced from contract services and APD. So it's two different pots of money.
The 135.
So are we talking about
budget? Sorry.
So we talking about combining those two into the contingency fund? Is that what we're talking about? Adding the 110 to the 135 and putting that all in the contingency
fund? Alderman Gay, is that what you had in mind, is to take this 110 and also put it in the contingency and
So as we'll see with Amendment 20, as that I stated that I'll now pull, but I'll explain the process anyway. Amendment 19, which we're talking of now, would have taken this funding and just, again, moved it to the contingency fund, and that would have been used for the Office of Community Caring Services. Amendment 20, which I introduced, would have taken $135,000, and it would have been broken down into multiple groups to help, so 25,000 would have gone to the Hispanic and African American liaison. 45,000 would have gone to the mayor's office for an internship program. $50,000 would have gone in grant form to HACA for technological updates to their 2 community centers. So 2 separate plans. But now what is happening now, let's follow this. If this passes, yes, we will have both $110,000 from this and the $135,000, which we will later, in a more symbolic way, earmark for the office. So only if this passes will both the $110,000 and the $135,000 go into contingency. If this does not pass, then it'll be the $135,000.
So I'm asking the city manager. So that's a plausible. Is that what Alderman Rodriguez kind of had in mind? Alderman Rodriguez, is that what you had in mind, to put the 110 and the 135 in one pot, in the one contingency pot?
No, that wasn't my original understanding or my intention. But I definitely appreciate that that effort of Alderman Gay.
That's not my intention.
Would you be amenable to that?
No. So
are you amenable to that?
My intention wasn't to add the 2 pots and put them into something. My intention was to keep the 110 under contract services for the crisis response team, and then the 135 allocated, whether it's earmarked through the contingency fund for the Office of Community Care, which I believe should be outside the police department, but that can be defined. And sorry, I just blanked. Yeah, that's essentially it.
You guys are such.
So I guess I'm just kind of, I'm at a crossroads as to, on the one hand, I like putting the 135 and the 110 in the same pot, but my trepidation now is, how does that affect what the police department will be doing going forward before we make the determination on the entire pot of money? And I think at this point, we may need to hear from Director Gerald or City Manager Gerald or Director Dickinson or someone from the city police department, but put a tag on that right now. And I want to go back to something Alderman Savage said. My whole point of having them in the same office is to quell anything being reactive. I think if they work together as a team, then we have come to a point where we won't get that reactionary. It will be a team effort on the police side, on the social services side, as well as the police services, the police safety side. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I guess I need to find out, before we go any further, what's the effect of keeping the 110 where it is, which is for the crisis response, and then putting the 135 into the contingency fund. I need to know that before I start voting. So let's hear from Director Gerald, as well as Ms. Dickinson, as well as someone from the police department.
Oh, if we do it that way, so the 110,000 that we're talking about cutting from APD will not get cut, and that'll stay with APD for the mobile unit, which leaves the balance of the 135 available to be redistributed as you all decide. If it's going to be for the carrying organization, then they'll go to contingency initially, and then there'll have to be an ordinance that moves it back out to whatever purpose that you want to use it for. So there'll be a whole discussion. So I understand the idea of telegraphing what that money is going to be used for, but until that discussion takes place, that doesn't have any legal effect. It's not going to. Go ahead.
I have a question based on what you're saying. If we wanted to start the procedure of braiding these services within the police department using that 110 on July 1st, can we do that? Because it's going to take a little time to set up a separate office. I'm looking at trying to do something July 1st. Can that 110, and can we use that 110? I know it's for crisis response, but is there some way that the police department can use that 110 to do what we're trying to do in the long term?
Let's ask Major.
Because I want to start something July 1st.
Let's ask Major Herman to come on the call. He's standing by and he can address the question that you're asking.
Major Herman, are you out there? You're on mute? You're on mute, Major Herman. Okay.
How about that?
Yep, we got you.
We can hear you.
Okay. And Lieutenant McGinnis as well.
Major Herman, did you hear the question?
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. We can hear you now.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
The question is, we're talking about the 135 that we're discussing about putting in the contingency fund.
Right.
But we're also talking about the 110 through crisis response. If we want to start something July 1st, as far as braiding these services, maybe a clinician and a police officer, say Sergeant Vaden and a clinician within the police department, and there's something that we need to respond to on July the 1st. Are we capable of using that 110 for something like that? Or now and for lack of a better term, still beholden to crisis response?
Well, I think it's important to explain the way it works right now is that the $110,000 is paying the salary of a licensed clinician. That licensed clinician handles Annapolis City workload. The reason the budget emanates from the police department is because we saw the need to have a diversion. All we do is criminal justice. So when we have a call for service, we needed an alternative to the criminal justice system to divert these people into. In a lot of cases, we get the same repeat, for lack of a better word, offenders. And a lot of times, although there might be a criminal justice component to it, what's really required is a mental health intervention. So what this licensed clinician in the county does, and what Sergeant Vaden does, is she works with the county, because typically these cases come to our attention, our being government. These cases come to our attention by means of a 911 call. Somebody calls about somebody being violent, somebody being a repeat offender, burglars, all of these sorts of things. What we do is we refer these things to the crisis center, and our licensed clinician in Anne Arundel County works with Sergeant Vaden. Every day she goes to the entire, all of our cases, our petitions for emergency evaluation, all the stuff that's referred by another officer. and that all of that caseload is maintained in a health department, confidential health department. Sergeant Vaden, for example, is under a confidentiality agreement with the health department. So all that entire caseload is worked by the health department, and they work in conjunction with us in many cases to come into Annapolis and meet with the people, make sure that they have the care that they require. And in a lot of instances, we're able to reduce, from our point of view, we're able to reduce substantially the recidivism. In a lot of instances, if a person has the proper care, the proper medication, be it substance abuse treatment, anything along those lines, the problem is properly evaluated. In times past, our only option was to arrest them and put them into the criminal justice system. And then we left it to parole and probation, pretrial release, and all the rest of it to do the proper identification. What this allows us to do is do a pre-criminal justice intervention. And there's a balancing act between what we do and what the health department does. For example, if a person is completely unwilling to do that, we still have the criminal justice aspect to it that we can use parole and probation to do. So short answer to your question is we could do that, but we're already doing that. I'm not really seeing the point in creating an additional administrative layer to accomplish the same thing. Did that answer your question?
Thank you, Major Herman. So you've at least enlightened me specifically on what you've been doing for the past couple of years. So, okay, all right. A lot of the nuance I didn't know about, but thank you.
Can I?
Please, Dave.
Alderman Tyndale Charles. Financially, we have an agreement with the county for that $110,000 to cover the services that they provide. And so one of the questions that I wanted to ask Alderman Gay was whether our expectations of what you're looking for from mobile crisis is going to be covered by that $110,000 if the actual activity of the program is moved somewhere else in the city. And yeah, there was something else, but that's my primary question. If Jen Corbin completely understands what you're looking for, and she's said that $110,000 will cover that, then that's fine. But I just want to make sure that we're not moving money with an expectation we're going to continue to get the same services if the county, if Mobile Crisis Incorporated is not on the same page with our expectations. So,
Alderman Gay?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. McGuez. I don't know your rent, so I didn't want to disrespect you. That's why I chose Mr. So per my conversation with her earlier, if the $110,000 was removed, the safe station operations would continue to work, the same way they do now. If someone was called, they'd be sent there. They'd be able to transfer them with assistance if needed. That is per my conversation earlier today.
Okay, yeah, the safe stations is not the majority of our contact with Mobile Crisis, as far as I know, doesn't involve safe stations. It's kind of a separate.
Well, that's true, but I think it's important to note that we're talking about the same client base to a very large extent. So if we're able to provide front-end intervention in mental health care and substance abuse intervention on the front end, they don't end up going to the safe stations. So I think that's an important thing to note as we're looking at this as an intervention for the entire client base, not just treating them as two separate things. It's very much linked.
So
I was just going to say, if she's telling you specifically that safe stations won't be affected, that's one type of their response.
Right.
But a lot of the other responses, I would say the majority, do not involve safe stations.
And which ones would you be speaking of? Outside of what Major Coleman
I think it's easier to say safe stations is specifically someone showing up at a fire station or a police department saying that they need help for substance abuse. And we do have those, certainly. But I would say the majority of our calls to mobile crisis and requests for them to respond out somewhere to assist is just anywhere in the community where someone has called, whether it's themselves or someone around them, for someone who needs some mental health assistance. And again, I think that that's the majority of our contact with mobile crisis, but I don't have any stats off the top of my head or anything.
And so with this, that part would not be taken away. In fact, that's the most important. And that's why I think that we need to make a change in terms of how we make that response. I guess my question would then go to Major Herman in regards to, you listed the multiple and various ways that they get involved in the police department, but is there data that can say that, yes, we are providing or we are bringing in crisis response on 95% of our calls. And with these calls, we are, instead of arresting, with those calls, we're doing, 65% arrest, and the rest is, we're willing to get them into programs to receive the assistance and helps that they need. I guess because when I talk to Jen, she too expresses the concern in saying that the system can work. The system can, it can be perfected, but I can't respond to, a crisis that I don't know about. She also used a quote, which I thought was great, from, I think she said Sergeant Thomas, which is, crisis doesn't need the police needs crisis, is what he likes to say in terms of, they function well, and they can do the job on their own. The extra layer is having the police in there. I mean, and them backing that, which is Rhonda's idea, and I think would be effective. It's not my personal option, but I guess is that, are we getting what we're paying for? I mean, are those things that you're saying happening? Because when I show up to a call or to a scene and we don't see those things, or when I have constituents call and say, well, this is not happening. I mean, it's just it's saying that it's happening, but it's not taking place. It's maybe two separate things. I don't know.
Well, there are two separate things. I think it's important to point out that what most citizens see is what I think the latter part of what you were referring to, the crisis intervention, where after there's been a critical incident, people go out and they talk to people, get them to debrief, get them to unload, that kind of thing. That's a critical component of what they do. More of what I'm describing, the focus of what I was describing, is the caseload analysis, which is and that typically comes to the police department. We're in the front lines. We're the ones who get the 911 call for service for a repeat offender, somebody who steals all the time, a burglar, an arsonist, a person who's violent, domestic. You get the idea. So that's the criminal justice part. That's the trigger to the whole system. What the officers are being trained on is how to identify when there's a criminal justice appropriate remedy to the situation and when there's a mental health appropriate remedy to the situation. When it's mental health, we divert it into that location. So what Sergeant Vaden is doing is she's been detailed to Anne Arundel County for, is it like 4 months, Chief? 5 months? I think it's been about 5 months, I think.
Yeah, it's been about 5 months. It was in the fall of last year, late fall of last year.
Right, well before the holidays. We detailed Sergeant Vaden. What she's doing is she's doing a workload analysis. She's cataloging how much of this can be brought to the Annapolis Police Department, what we're going to require to do training for all of the officers. And there's a layered training. There's a low level of certification that all officers are going to be trained on, and then a higher level of certification that some officers will be trained on. And then there's a high level of certification that will require the clinician to do. Because as you can imagine, there's an inherent conflict between our duties as a law enforcement officer and the duties of clinician. There are certain things when people tell us things in a clinical environment, they have an expectation that we won't use that against them in a criminal justice setting. So we can't be completely certified counselors. That requires a mental health professional. To say nothing of the fact that at some point we start to stray from the core competencies of a police officer. So what Sergeant Vaden is initially working on is doing a workload analysis and how we're going to create what part of it is going to be appropriate for the police to do, what part of it is appropriate for the administration of police to do, and when we hand the ball off to the mental health professionals. That's what we're all working on right now. And that's a work in progress. So the $100,000, I don't suppose there's any metaphysical reason why the money needs to be in the police department. But we were the ones that saw the need, we being, I mean, our predecessors. It happened well before myself, not before Lieutenant Miguez, but before me and before the chief. Our predecessors saw the need to do this, and the chief, and I don't want to speak for you, Chief, but when the chief saw it and when I saw it, we initially signed on to it because it's actually a really, really well thought out and well-intended intervention strategy. Now, as you say, I don't suppose there's any real reason it has to belong to us, but we do have to have a critical part of it.
So I'm going to go to the police chief in 1 second, but
I still have the floor, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Finlayson is next, and then Alderman Arnett. But this is a very well-intentioned idea, Alderman Gay, but I don't think the votes are there to get it across.
Yeah, I still have the floor. I mean, if you want to take the vote now, you can take the vote, but I still have the floor for questions.
Well, I'm going to go. I think Alderman Finlayson is next.
But I still have the floor, is what I'm saying.
Okay. If you can. We have been talking around in circles here about the same thing, so please.
I don't think so. I don't think we've gotten to a solution. I mean, maybe you have, and maybe crisis response shows up to Ward 1, but it hasn't showed up to 6. So, you know, I'm confused, and we haven't got to a point where we're saying that. I'm asking for data points, and is this effective? If it is effective, would our black teens still be murdering each other on the streets? Would there still be pent up frustration, and would there still be mass social problems in our low income communities? If it was truly effective in the way that they're saying it is, that people are getting these options and they're given the tools and resources they need to get out of these situations, we'd be seeing the results. I don't see those results daily. And my constituents don't, and that's why I'm speaking for this issue. And I think to simply walk away from it and continue the status quo for whether it be a year or 6 month on pilot, I don't care what it is just putting more and more people at risk. I mean, so what concrete solution are we going to walk away with from here? Can they provide us the statistics that can prove me wrong in saying that crisis response has been effective, and that, of this blank amount of interactions and arrests, 85% have been given an opportunity to, with opioid or mental health or treatment assistance? How does that, where can we pinpoint to say that, yes, this is successful, and yes, if we vote this down, we aren't turning our back on a large majority of our citizens?
So nobody is turning this down. We all agree with you. It's just about...
We're agreeing, but we aren't providing the solution. That's what I'm saying.
Well, I think Alderman Rodriguez's amendment provides part of the solution. Chief Jackson?
Yeah, I think what's getting a little bit lost in this discussion, with all due respect, I tried to articulate earlier, we're in mental health crisis and social are getting intertwined. The role, and I've had discussions with Jen, let me first say this, and I'll be brief. Annapolis is way ahead of the curve when it comes to mental health. In most jurisdictions, and under Maryland law, I don't have the article, and you can help me out, Paul, if you're listening, but Maryland law gives any law enforcement officer the authority to take anybody in custody just based on the layman's term that they believe are in mental health crisis. And many jurisdictions don't have a crisis response team. If somebody was in the street butt naked or on West Street and speaking incoherently and engaging in behaviors that would lead a reasonable and prudent person to believe that this person is undergoing a mental health crisis, then the officer can take him in custody. But I've seen, since I've been in Annapolis, is way ahead of, far more progressive. To your point, Alderman Gay, when we encounter somebody in crisis, and we do, I've witnessed it firsthand, so I'm not going by what any of my subordinates are telling me. We do notify our crisis response, and we make sure that the person is engaged in a way that de-escalates the mental health behavior that results.
On what percentage of calls, though?
So we will get you the breakdown, Alderman Gay, of how many calls
but I'm just
done and where they go.
That I think the body needs to hear. But what you are talking about is not the job of the crisis response team to get people into jobs and get them off the streets and make sure the recidivism rate is not, because not everybody who's in crisis, it's two types of crisis. And I just don't want to mislead. What Jen and Lieutenant Thomas is doing in Anne Arundel County is mental health primarily. What I'm hearing, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, Alderman Gay, what I'm hearing is that you want resources in your wards so we can have good public safety, to take away the reason for people to commit crimes. Because mental health, we are doing an adequate job. I have to defend that to make sure that crisis response is notified, and we're working towards. That's why vagueness, as Major Harmon articulated a few minutes ago, that's why she's detailed there, so eventually we can be independent of the crisis response team. So all those dollars can come back to the city of Annapolis. But what you're talking about, beyond just people who are in mental health crisis, like domestic violence, alcohol, treatment on demand for addiction, people need want to detox and all those type of things. It goes beyond just the CRT. We need a social worker. We need officers who can attack, or people, period. They don't have to be officers if you don't want them to be. But we need social service resources to the underserved communities, not only in Annapolis, but this whole Black Lives Matter movement is the reason why America's mad, because they feel that their government hasn't done enough to address the needs of the people who have been historically underserved. And their only response to those underserved people is through using the criminal justice system to either incarcerate them or to cage them. What needs to be a part of the discussion, how can we work together and the police officers provide the public safety services in the most exigent circumstances, all the while providing resources into communities that's underserved so they don't have to engage in antisocial or criminal behavior and make it strictly a police response. We ask police to do too much. I would agree with you there. And they're not trained clinicians or sociologists or psychologists or licensed therapists. And then we get angry when police go there to abate the problem, either through arrest or through somebody's use of force. And I'm gonna wrap up, but I'm hearing two different things, and we need to decide at which point, which ones do we want to how do we want to compartmentalize that? If you take it from me, like I said earlier today, then that's the part of the process. I answer to you. I answer to civilian authority. You know, if you want to defund or however you want to characterize it and take resources from the police department, all I would ask to do respectfully and as a good public servant is make sure that you do it in a deliberative and a judicial way, not make it hasty.
Alderman Gay, you've had the floor for a long time, please. And then I'll go to Alderman Finlayson, then Alderman Arnett, and then Alderman Paone. All have their hands up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You said I still have the floor.
I said he still has the floor. Come on.
Well, I mean, he just completely flipped over everything I said, and you're not giving me a chance to respond to that.
I'm giving you a chance to respond now. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what I was saying. I think what a good public servant is questioning why resources are being spent and we are not getting something in return. And to get back to the original state, this is all about mental health. That's the reason that this was cut, so that we can provide those resources. And I'm just saying, if it's being done, we'll continue to fund it. If it's not, take the funding away. No, nobody can prove that to us, though. And what's upsetting me is that we're being told that it's being done, and we're not seeing that. It's not being reflected. So I think the votes should reflect that. And to mislead and say that we're number one in response to mental health and all of this stuff. I would have to disagree, because I think that if we were, we would not be seeing the continuation of problems stemming from mental health and an extension social issues. And I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you. I think it's pretty clear, at least to me, that we don't really have our finger on the pulse of what this department or what they do. You know, when Jen initially presented to the city council, we were introduced to her program, and we questioned why Annapolis did not have a greater benefit of the program. And she told us that funding did not allow for her to hire enough people to do it. And so we came up with funding to support someone who would help us in the city. At that time, if my memory serves me correctly, we were relying on them to help us when we had a crisis, such as if there was a shooting in the community. And we needed somebody to come in and help to get the community at a point where they could heal as best as possible as a result of whatever the tragedy may be. You know, just in this last 30 minutes, we have perceptions that they deal with safe streets, they deal with recidivism, they deal with mental health issues. You know, so I think, Alderman Gay, we really need to get our hands around what it is we would like for them to do for us. And I think that's a larger discussion than what we can have at this point. So I would hope that we put this on in the parking lot, not to forget it, but to come back to it so that we can have a clear definition of what we would like our crisis response team to do. And then another level of discussion as to where they should be, because that's a whole nother issue that we're not going to solve tonight. So, thank you.
Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to point out the irony that we just breezed through in about 10 minutes of this meeting, $146 million budget, and we're now spending well over an hour and a half discussing $110,000. I would like to suggest to my colleagues that we have a program that is in progress. I think that Alderman Gay is correct to ask questions about whether or not it's successful, although I think it's unrealistic to expect that $110,000 is going to come anywhere close to solving all of the problems of a large, long-time troubled community. Much more work to be done there. I'm appreciative of the new information we got from Major Herman and Lieutenant Miguez and Chief Jackson, but I just can't be convinced to vote for 19. We have a program that's in progress and working, and we don't have an alternative, nor have I seen the alternative amendments. So I think we should move on with the vote. And I won't call the question because I think this is important debate, but boy, I hope we're going to end debate soon.
Alderman Savage was next, and Alderman Tierney.
Wait a minute, I thought I was.
Oh, sorry. Did I see? Didn't see you down there, Fred. Sorry.
I did have my hand up.
I lost
Fred,
you.
I've had it up for
I think I went Savage and then you. So you're after Alderman Savage.
No, you didn't.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm just going to stay with Savage and then we'll go.
I just have a quick comment anyway, but it boils down to the data, which Alderman Gay was saying. We really need to hear this. I mean, we're hearing this is such an important program, but you're not providing any kind of the proof, the data. How is this used? When has it been used? And we need that information to make a really good decision here. But I still support what the alderman is proposing, because I still think it's worth. And he spoke with the county, and it sounds like this is still going to be something that's going to be able to move forward in a positive way.
Thank you, Alderman Pound and Alderman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd call the question. We've been over everything at least 4 times.
Yes.
It's time to move on.
Yeah, that was going to be mine.
We do that with boat
Second, I'll second
We do that with boat slips
And
and Airbnbs all the time. Come on, these are serious issues.
It's a very important debate.
Oh, it is, yeah.
We are all with you, Alderman Gay, in your intention. We couldn't ask for more caring people than Steve Thomas and that department. I think that if we could clone them in Jen Corbin and get someone just like them for Annapolis, that would be a great situation for us. So we're all ready to move in that direction. I'm not sure if everyone thinks this is ready for prime time. Regina? Okay, we're going to vote on this with a show of hands. All those in favor of amendment number 19?
No.
Question.
Oh, sorry.
Question first.
Just calling. Just a vote to call
the question now. Sorry.
Can I make a comment on after the vote? To clarify the call. Okay, I just wanted to clarify the call.
Okay, all those in favor of calling the question, say aye with a show of hands. Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That motion carries.
All those opposed, say no.
Was that 2/3? You need 2/3 for call the question to carry.
You have 3 no's. You have 6-3.
Carries.
6-3. Okay. Thank you. So let's move on to a vote on the amendment number 19. Gay Mobile Crisis Team. All those in favor of Alderman Gay's amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Show of hands.
You have 4.
4. All those opposed, say nay.
1,
Nay.
2, 3, 4, 5. The motion is defeated.
Thank you. Jody, let's go to the Finance Director.
Yeah, so what I wanted to say is we move on to the next amendment, but the one that we provided on Granicus assumed that 19 would pass. So Regina has one that that is worded correctly, provided that 19 did not pass. So you're going to get a 20 amendment sent to you right now. That's the one you should consider next.
Takia, you sent it right. Takia is sending in you the new amendment number 20 right now.
Regina, would you make sure it's sent to my personal email, please?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So, Jody, do we hold to get it on the floor, or are you pulling it, Alderman Gay?
Yeah, so if Alderman Gay pulls this amendment, I think it's irrelevant. But if you're going to talk about it and vote on it, you need the replacement amendment 20, which is coming to you.
Who's it from?
Is this being sent on Granicus?
No.
Is this being sent on Granicus?
No, it's being sent to your email.
Email.
Who is it from?
Takia.
And it will be Alderman Gay's adjusted one, right? Jody?
Right. And it's written reflecting that amendment 19 did not pass. 19 did not pass.
We'll wait for that to come.
Can you put it on? Can anybody put it on Granicus? Oh, that's not possible. Can you load it on Granicus?
Jody, how are we getting this to the Alderman?
Takia just emailed it to your email Alderman addresses and to send it to Susie. It's going to take a few minutes for us to upload it to Granicus from here.
Okay, can you put your hand up with the email, please, City Council?
you know what the first line is? Does anyone have the first line?
Yes, I do.
How does it read?
On page 1, line 41.
Strike 86 million.
Right, and the difference, the most notable difference is in the description. This is a little bit shorter description. So for those of you that already have 20, we've sent 21 through 24, correct? And the city clerk has sent those out as well. So we'll take those in turn once we're done with 20.
Actually, if you're looking for 21 through 24, Katie sent that out.
Okay.
Is that separate from the one that Takia just sent?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Sent out about 20 minutes ago.
When did Katie send it?
20 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago.
At 8:36 p.m.
Could I get it forwarded to my personal email, please?
Takia, take care of that right now.
Thank you.
So do you want me to start explaining this?
Do you have a copy of it, Alderman Gay?
I do, yeah. I got the one that Takia sent, yeah.
You make a motion first.
There you go.
Okay, can I get a motion to bring Amendment 20 to the floor, please? Get a motion?
So moved.
Okay, now get a second. Thank you. Alderman Gay. Regina?
I'm sorry, did Alderman Savage move that amendment?
I think he did. Alderman Rodriguez.
Yes,
Thank you.
did.
Thank you.
Alderman Gay, you ready?
I'm just getting clarification from the clerk. Just 1 second. All right, sorry, I just had to clarify with you. All right, so an Amendment 20 was assuming that we would have had the $135,000 from additional cuts. And so basically, I just put it in the community in places that I thought were necessary. $50,000 to HACA for upgrades to their 2 community centers, $25,000 to the African American Hispanic liaisons, $40,000 to disadvantaged youth internship programs in the mayor's office, and $20,650 to support the offices of community caring services. Since we've decided that $135,000 will be used for the Office of Community Caring Services, I'll just make a motion to withdraw Amendment 20.
Second.
Third.
Any other discussion? We can vote on that. Alderman Rodriguez.
All right.
Is that a vote or a discussion?
Discussion, sorry.
Yes, Alderman Rodriguez.
I'm not one to overtalk. You all know that. I just wanted just clarifying question for my curiosity from, I think, probably directed towards Finance Director Dickinson. Because this amendment doesn't, I mean, just the funds for cover this amendment would come from the contingency fund, correct?
Correct. So I'll remind you that in Amendment 17, we took those cuts, the $135,650, and we put them in the contingency account.
Yeah.
So now it's what do you want to do with that? And the Amendment 20 was Alderman Gay moving it for those different programs, leaving only $20,000 in the contingency account. But if this is being withdrawn, then we're going to consider some more amendments that do different things.
Thank you. Next question will be.
Hello.
Okay.
Somebody get the door.
So that 100 and so let me see. Is there enough in the contingency fund or in terms of surplus in terms of the revenue side that could both cover these as well as the money earmarked for the Office of Community Caring?
So every year we put an amount in the contingency fund, and we put in 410 at the beginning. The mayor's proposed budget included $410,000 in the contingency account for contingencies, regular contingencies, including snow. So we typically try to leave that there until we're done with the winter. This would have added now we have $135,650 in there as well, to be used for either contingencies, or you could later move it out and use it for the Office of Community Caring or whatever other initiatives.
Thank you.
Alderman Tierney, before we vote.
I just want to give this a second chance here, because I don't understand, Alderman Gay, why this isn't a win-win as far as using. I mean, we approved the budget with 100 and what is the number? 135,650. Use the term leftover in contingency. There it is for us, and you've got the allocation that you want, and we get some money for the Office of Community Caring, albeit 20,650. So what's wrong with? I like this one.
So what's happening is because. And then I'll speak also to the second one that's coming up now, kind of just catch you up on what's happening. So because we are using the 135,000 to move forward with the Office of Community Care and Services, I'm pulling this amendment, and then in the next amendment, there will be $50,000 for HACA, and then an additional $85,650 also being put to contingency for the Office of Community Caring. So at the end, if the 135,000 plus the 85,000, we're looking at roughly $230,000. No, or am I double counting? Okay, never mind. Okay, we'll just have the 135.
Right. Okay. So with that's to be. So we'll have another opportunity to get this 135.
And there's other Amendment 21 and 22 are coming up. And you can
stay tuned.
You cannot do both. 21 and 22, you cannot do both. You're going to have to pick one or the other. 22 would supersede what you did with 21, and
oh, that was not okay.
You just have to look and see what they do, and okay.
So we have a motion on the floor to withdraw Amendment 20. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. Alderman Savage is opposed.
I'm abstaining because I can't. I don't have it. I can't. It's not on Granicus, so I can't vote. I don't see it.
Okay. Regina, it got voted down.
The motion carried, by the way.
Well, it was withdrawn.
It's just to withdraw. Yep.
Right. So it is withdrawn.
Withdraw carries. We're moving on to the one that should fix this. Amendment 21. Alderman Rodriguez. Can someone move this?
This is. Oh, God.
Yeah, you got to move the amendment.
Someone move Amendment 21, please.
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Alderman Rodriguez.
I think Amendment 21 is Alderman Gay's.
Okay.
So now I see what Jody was referencing, because I did have this. So this too includes the $135,000. So now this is where I guess we would have to make the choice of either Amendment 21, which is here now, which will put $50,000 to the mayor's office, special projects for hackers technological updates. And then it would move $85,650 to the Office of Community Care and Services. So that would use the $135,650. So now I guess this is what we would decide on.
Because you need a second.
Jody, can I get some clarification, please?
Well, no, I just wanted to clarify that the writing on the amendment says that it's a HACA technology update study, but Alderman Gay asked me to take the word study out of there because it's not for a study, but I forgot. So it's technological updates, 50,000 of technological updates, not for a study. I just wanted to clarify that.
So,
Alderman Savage had his hand up first, and Alderman Arnett.
I just wanted to get some more information about what this entails, the technology update study. What exactly is it looking for in terms of technology?
Alderman Gay?
Thanks. Yeah, so the two community centers are the Robinwood Community Center and the Eastport Community Center. They need to be updated. They need new laptops so that children can continue to utilize it, especially in the post-COVID phase as we move into things and look at how they operate. Wi-Fi connectivity to be continued and partner with Comcast services. They also need TVs, just things that would typically be in a normal community center that they just haven't had the opportunity to update in quite some time.
Okay, thank you.
I think it was Alderwoman Pendell-Charles. Oh, no, Alderman Arnett was
no,
next.
I think Alderman Arnett was next and then me, yeah.
You know, you bear with me. You guys move around the screen a lot, and I have to remember who had their hand up, so I apologize.
Thank you.
Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'm hopelessly lost. What amendment are we on? Is
Amendment
it
21?
All right, so
allocation of $140,000 to the Office of Community. Is that right, Jody?
No, see that.
Can you ask that again, please?
What is Amendment 21, Alderman Gay's amendment?
Yes, Alderman 21 is from Alderman Gay, and it takes the $135,650 and puts $50,000 in the mayor's office for HACA technology, and $85,000 stays in the contingency account with the intent to use it for the Office of Community Caring.
So I apparently don't have Amendment 21.
It came in an email.
When I go to that, it reads Amendment 22, and it's the Rodriguez amendment. So
okay,
what is Amendment 21?
In the same, Alderman Arnett, in that same email, there was Amendment 20, Amendment 21, Amendment 22. You got them all in there? Okay. Yeah. So it's in the same email. Amendment 20 was in there. And I'm sorry, 21 and 22. 21 and 22. And 23.
I'm with you, Alderman Arnett, too, because I had 21 down as Alderman Rodriguez's amendment. Right. So
21 is Alderman Gay's and 22 is Alderman Rodriguez.
All right. Look, I profoundly object to this way of doing business. I mean, this is ridiculous. We don't have the information. We certainly can't have considered it with any time. But I really, if it is $50,000 to HACA, why isn't that part of community grants? Or if it's for capital investment, why isn't that in the capital budget? I really that's me. $50,000 for whatever it is, and I can't tell because I don't have it. I cannot find it in any of this morass of emails. I'm looking now at Alderman Gay's amendment number 21.
This is this one.
And I don't see, I see that this amendment is $50,000 to the mayor's special projects for HACA. Let the mayor fund the mayor's special projects. I don't understand why we're taking this out of the $135,000 contingency, and I really don't understand what it's for. And I just strongly object to having this run by us with no time to even understand what's going on, let alone make a meaningful, proper vote.
Alderman Pindell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have another question. Alderman Gay, I've been working with a work group through Anne Arundel County Public Schools, as well as our assistant city manager, and talking about connectivity and Chromebooks and supplying our students. And one of the issues we have is if it's compatible to what the school system is doing. Now, I don't have a problem with providing this necessarily for children that really need it, but have you done any research as to whether it's compatible? Because I know there's been some huge conversation. We had a big meeting a couple of weeks ago concerning if this is all, if they can access what they need to access for their homework and for the schoolwork that they need to do. So I'm really concerned about that.
I mean, well, right now they can't access it at all because the technology that they have, just, you can't get Google Drive, you can't get Google Chrome, you can't get anything on a big back, Dell laptop, Dell desktop. And so the updates are necessary. We've all been to the community centers and have seen the lack of investment that they have. So whether it come from the capital budget, the mayor's budget, my budget, I think that the investment is necessary into our communities.
That's not my issue.
I know that
my issue is will they be
responding to both? I was responding to both.
Okay, well that's not my issue. My issue is it compatible to the systems where they will be able to use these to complete their homework assignments and summer school and those kinds of things? That's my main issue.
Alderwoman,
have you done any research on that with the school system?
Alderwoman, if they receive the funding through this, if this is passed, then they will be able to do whatever is necessary to make sure it's compatible, whether that be a Chromebook or through partnerships with Dell. It can be done. I know that the school uses Chromebooks, so that is a possibility. It just has to be looked at by HACA, and I'm sure that they'd be willing and capable of doing so.
My understanding is that the school system, preferably because of this issue, are purchasing these Chromebooks knowing that we've got the mechanisms in place. I'm not an IT person at all, not at all. So this isn't my area, but I know there's been a huge concern because there have been private donators who say, we'll donate Chromebooks, but they're not necessarily compatible. But if you say they are, then fine.
Well, I'm saying that I'm sure when they get this money, they just won't go buy a bunch of materials that wouldn't be useful. I think that Paul Diggs or Melissa Maddox-Evan will communicate with the board effectively and make sure that they spend it in the appropriate places with the appropriate technology that will help our vulnerable low-income students access, as you mentioned, homework connection, reading materials. For adults, it can be used to access economic, trade applications, schooling applications. I mean, it just doesn't stop with our kids. I think it serves purposes for the entire communities as we've seen with this pandemic. We don't have the technology in our communities at all to withstand any of these. And once we go back to normal and they take those materials back to the schools, it's then up to us to provide those resources for our communities.
Okay, thank you.
Any other debate on this? Alderman Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Amendment 21, correct?
Yes.
Where is this $50,000 coming from?
Jody?
Is it eating into the 135?
It is a way of using the 135,650 for other needs, and this amendment would use 50 for the purpose you've been talking about, and 85,650 would stay in the contingency account with the intent of using it for the Office of Community Caring.
So we haven't even realized the 135,000, and already we're spending it. And on something like this, there's absolutely no prep, no understanding. I cannot possibly vote for this, even if the outcome is well intended. This, again, I have to protest. This is a terrible way to do business. It just doesn't make sense to have all of this rush bias at the last minute, no preparation. Didn't even hear about it this afternoon when we were discussing things. We're getting these not through Granicus, through emails, and it's just not a good way to do business.
Alderman Gay?
Yeah, just quickly. As someone new to the council and, just eager to make changes for my community, I didn't find it my responsibility to come back with each and every amendment that I asked to be drafted and communicate that with my colleagues, just as I didn't find it my responsibility to go out and get the $150,000 for a ward that I don't even occupy, but to do so because I found it necessary for our communities. To that extent, the $135,000 not being realized, I realized that it was money that could be used to help my community, and I put an amendment in for it, just as you could have done the same. I think that as the alderman of the neighboring ward, I think that it'd be important for you to support this, considering that your constituency, find it necessary for us to find ways to decrease crime and to help find ways to occupy our youth. So this is a win for you too, my colleague from Ward 8.
Alderman Gay, could I ask you, Alderman Arnett?
No, I can't support it. I don't know what it's doing. I think Rhonda raised some reasonable questions. This is just $50,000 that we're throwing out there without proper consideration, DeJuan, earlier you asked the police department a legitimate question about the data and the efficacy of their program. There is no way we can know what this is about or how efficacious it is. And it's eating into a small fund that we now will later on, the next amendment is to eat up all of the 135. So, I just think this is, again, not a good way to do business.
Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Gay, I applaud what you're doing. This week we do have a meeting, and I'll be most willing to check on this because I know they're in the process. The group is in the process of going through this Chromebook allocation. I don't want to do anything. Put it this way. This money that you've allocated here, I'm not saying may be better spent, but we may be able to get a bigger bang for our buck once I look into this week to find out exactly what this could really mean for us this week. I definitely don't want to vote against anything that has to do with our children and our communities that really need it, but I want to make sure that everything is right and tight, at least through the school system. And I'm put it this way. Being an employee of the school system, I have an obligation in my mind to do that. And I'm on this work group. So I really do have to do that. I have to do that. And I'm in the Office of Equity. So I really need to take a look at this from my other job perspective.
And Alderman Gay, can I just ask you, will Alderman Rodriguez's amendment, if this doesn't pass, still give you funding for these things? Because I'll probably have to vote against it so that the council don't think that we've come up with a plan to put more money in the mayor's office. This is a well-intentioned idea, but
his funding would not, because that would be direct. The $135,000 would be used elsewhere. It'd be used for the Office of Community Caring Services, which I support. But this also would give funds to the Office of Community Caring Services while supporting our underserved communities, which, just as we go down the list of amendments, we're getting like slim to none in how we're putting our funding towards our underserved communities.
Alderman Tierney.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid. Why am I echoing? Oh, I don't want to hear myself. That's why I said what I said earlier. I'm afraid we're not going to end up with anything. So So this is a question. Why am I hearing myself?
Can everybody mute who's not speaking?
Yikes. Anyways, is there a way that we can take this contingency leftover money, whatever we want to call it? Do we use allowances in municipal budgeting? Can we earmark it and be pretty general about the description and allowance of future expenditures under the Office of Community Caring to be determined? But can we do that? Something to get it and not define it, because we're not going to come to agreement and we're going to lose it.
I don't know of any mechanism by which we do that, except for to put it in the contingency account, and then at a later time, the council can come forward with, we want to use this money for this purpose, and we move it out of contingency into a department that we have set up internally in our system.
Okay. Bingo, bango. Okay. Bingo, bango. So we do that. But we have that record of doing that today. So it's not lost.
It's in the descriptions to the amendments, and I think 22 is similar to what you just described. So
but it goes to the department.
But the description isn't a legal binding. If you decided later that you didn't want to do the office, you could always use it for something else. But it will take action to get it out of contingency into a regular departmental budget.
Okay. Perhaps Alderman Gay would like to amend that description a little bit to his satisfaction. So, but I saw the preview of Amendment 22, and that's a win-win. But I just don't know if Alderman Gay approves of the description, or if that, as you said, matters.
And this 21 puts 50,000 into the mayor's budget, and leaves only 85,650 in contingency. So if that's what your intent is, that's what this amendment does to the bill. It puts 50 in the mayor's office for the HACA technological updates.
And Alderman Rodriguez, could I ask you, when we go on to the next amendment, will we cover a lot of the things that we're trying to get to here for Alderman Rodriguez, for Alderman Gay, but still have a little more time to flesh the ideas out?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think the scope of the Office of Community Cares is to be defined. And for me, that includes the type of projects that your office is already working on, like through the African American and Hispanic Community Services Specialist, and so forth. So yeah, the intention with my amendment is to put the full 135 to a use through the Office of Community Caring or equivalent.
Mr. City Attorney just popped up.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure we're focused on the Amendment 21 before we start discussing 22, 23, 24, and 25.
Well, we'll go on to the rest of the Alderman Gay show.
Has that been moved? Where are we with 21?
21 has moved. It's got a first and a second. So we're going to get a vote on Alderman Gay's Amendment 21. All those in favor of Amendment 21, please say aye with a show of hands. All those opposed, say no with a show of hands.
No.
No.
The motion is defeated.
So what do we give our kids? I'm confused.
No.
So now, Mr. Mayor,
on to the next one.
Yes, you need a motion and a second for this next whatever it is.
Okay, we're moving to amendment number 22. This is where we can get the money put aside for the kids, Alderman Gay.
Seriously, we can.
So can I get someone to bring Amendment 22 to the floor, please?
So moved.
Okay, and a second from Ellie, thank you.
Yeah.
Alderman Rodriguez, thank you.
Not much more that needs to be said. I think this just sets the official intention to use that money for the system of care or community of care specialists. And so I just want to thank Alderman Gay for bringing this and elevating this discussion, and everyone else. and I know that the mission and scope of whatever is to be officially determined will be swift and thoughtful.
And is there some other wording that we needed to put in there to sort of satisfy that, you think? No? Okay.
No,
Thank
sir.
you, City Attorney. Alderman Rhonda Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Alderman Rodriguez, I just want to make sure, is this the contingency fund that we've been talking about tonight? Is that what this is? Okay, I just want to make sure that this is the contingency fund that we've been talking about. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Alderman Gay. Still got your mic off.
If we are not going to turn around and use this all for the Office of Community Care and Services, and as you're telling me, it will be used for other resources, why did we just defeat Amendment 21 when that was going to additional resources and the office would be receiving $86,000?
21's
So
not
my
on the floor, Mr. Mayor. 22's on the floor.
22, yeah. So, but Alderman Rodriguez, can you answer that?
Oh, I was just, I guess, initially responding to your question of could that money potentially be used for the type of projects listed in previously, and I think, I mean, technically, if you leave a general scope of the Office of Community Caring, depending on the scope and the type of projects that they'll do, you could very reasonable to think that some of those projects that would come out of your office can come out of their office as well. So that's all I was saying.
Thank you. Any other discussion on 22? Alderman Tierney.
I just want to make it clear that Jody said that can be done, Alderman Gay. We're not earmarking it to tonight. We'd need an ordinance to actually allocate that money specific to that. This is just allocating to just an allocation, to just call it contingency. To where we're going to put it will require ordinances.
A resolution.
A resolution, yeah.
Resolution to actually set it up, because once you set up the office, then you can, by ordinance, allocate the money. But a resolution could make sure that it stays intended for that particular thing, yes.
And may I just add that I think this is a perfect opportunity to have a city council work session with the APD to make sure we know what they have, how they do it, and before we decide, what specific uses.
They could bring the reporting to the table. That's a good idea, Alderman.
Yeah, and what Alderman Gay wants to see is what are the results as well.
Thank you. Alderman Gay had his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just, again, so instead of just giving the money to PACA as we would have done in the last amendment, now we're basically setting it up so that a resolution has to be drafted to give them the money at a later date instead of just giving it to them now as we would have done if passed to left.
If that's what the council decides to do at a later date, and if they
exactly, and that's the key word. If that's what the council decides to do, and thank you, Jody, for that. That's the key word. If that's what we decide to do, if that's what we decide to do, and we had the opportunity to do so tonight, but the votes weren't there. So I'm cautious if the votes would be there in the future.
Jody?
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that right now the money is in the contingency account. The only thing that this amendment does is you have a statement there in the description that says what the intent is. That's doesn't do anything from a legal standpoint. It just tells what the council's intent is with the 135. And then later an ordinance will have to be passed to bring that about.
Thank you, Jody. Any other discussion? Alderman Rhonda Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Alderwoman Tierney. Yes, we should have a work session. Ask APD to bring in any kind of data, statistics, a report as to how this has been going, something full-fledged that we can really take a look at, so we'll make a decision. As the chief said, when we talk about mental health is one thing, we're talking about providing services such as job training and that sort of thing. We're talking two different things, so that needs to be clarified before we move on. But no, I think a work session I think it's a wonderful idea. Thank you, Alderwoman Tierney.
Oh, thank you.
Any other hands up? Okay. We're going to vote now. We have a first and a second on Alderman Rodriguez Amendment 22. With a show of hands, all those in support say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
No.
Ayes have it. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the rest of the Alderman Gay show. I've got 2 more amendments coming up, Alderman Gay. So we would
have funded our communities in the first place.
You can characterize it like that if you want. So Alderman Gay, can we move Amendment 23, and can we get a second for this?
I'll move for a motion on Amendment 23.
Could I get a second, please? Jody's just seconded it. No, just
no. I just got to make a clarification. So you.
Alderman Savage, are you seconding it? Yep. Thank you.
I'm seconding. Okay.
I'm just going to get Jody to just make a clarification, and then we'll go to Alderman Gay, and then Alderman Arnett had his hand up next.
All right. So I know I'll speak to 23 and just briefly 24. This money that is contemplated being used for these purposes would be coming out of what's left in our reserve for one-time purposes. We do have several items that are designated as one-time purposes in the 21 budget, and a couple items that that we're setting aside for 22 and 23. But there is $224,000 left there that we were just leaving in the reserve. These next 2 items from Alderman Gay contemplate using that one-time reserve money for one-time purposes. So I'll just give you that as a lead in and let him explain his initiatives here.
Alderman Gay.
Thank you, Jody. So for Amendment 23, I talked with Director Gordon. I actually mentioned this just after the election last year. I believe under the previous administration, or maybe at the start of this, these bus stops those shelters were removed and were supposed to be replaced, and all but the shelters on President Street were replaced. So I requested that the funding be set aside to replace the bus shelters.
Alderman Annette has his hand up.
So this seems more like a capital expenditure, and B, why would we take it out of the general fund when transportation just got gigogs of money through their grant, which can be used, their $4 million grant, which can be used for all kinds of expenses?
Alderman Arnett, Director Gordon told me that the intent of the gigogs of money, or what did you just call it, is to do paper operations, and they did not get any approval for capital items. So he does not think that money could be used for this purpose.
So again, where is this money coming from? The one time only?
So at the end of 19, when we finished our audited statements, we had a reserve for one-time purposes. And we have allocated a lot of that for different things, including money for the CAD system, some other things. And there's a few other items in the budget. It's slipping my mind right now. There's $1.3 million, I think, of things that are in the self-containing breathing apparatuses are in the budget, and those are going to be covered by this reserve. These would just be additional items we would pay for with that one-time reserve.
But the way this reads,
about $220,000 left.
The way this reads, it's coming from the general fund.
Well, the reserve is in the general fund, so we would have to establish an appropriation in the general fund to send it over to the transportation fund, and establish appropriation in the transportation fund to actually buy the shelters.
So this will require further legislation?
No, this is all done in this amendment. You'll see that there's entries there in the transportation fund and the general fund, and then it amends Appendix C, which is where we state the revenue sources. It'll have to be amended as well. So this does the whole thing.
So I'm looking at page 4, line 3. That looks like a huge change, much more than $25,000. $5,426,684. Substitute $5,290,084. That's not $2,500. That's a huge change.
Okay, that is because we have incorporated every time we're doing one of these tonight, we're trying to incorporate all previous amendments that were passed, because when we change that page 4, line 3, we've got to make sure we've accommodated all the other amendments that passes too. So it's not just for this amendment, it's for this one and all the previous that affected that same line number.
So again, I have to protest this process. It's impossible to know what's going on. There's no time to trace these line by line, but this doesn't say down in the explanation that this is cumulative of a whole bunch of earlier changes, which are in the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars. All it says is we're doing $25,000, and that's just not transparent.
This is the way the amendment process works, and we could give you the components of each one of these changes, but we've gone through this very carefully and reviewed it, and these are the numbers we would need.
Well, I know, but we're voting on it, and it's a final vote. I don't think we really know what we're voting on, because we don't have all that information.
Well,
what it looks like, we're voting on $25,000, which, quite frankly, I'm all in favor of bus shelters, and certainly we need to give Alderman Gay something tonight. We're not taking care of things, but this is just not right. This is much more than a $25,000 transfer from the general fund to the transportation fund. Doesn't mention at all that this is coming from one-time only money. I mean, this is just not
correct. That is why I told you at the beginning we accidentally left that out of the description. It should be in the description. That's why I informed you at the beginning this is coming out of one-time money.
But we're voting on it without that in there. And I think we need to have
the description is not a legally binding item, and me telling you, you can just etch down the bottom of your amendment and then you have that information.
Well,
something we left out, we could give you another amendment, but then you'd probably get them. It would be confusing to get two of the same number amendments.
Well, so let me just ask you, the difference in page 4, line 3 is how much? I can't do that math in my head. 100 and
Give me a minute.
And let me turn to my colleagues. Is anyone else as confused as I am by all of this?
36,600.
No, I'm not confused. No.
The second sentence.
If I'm the only one that's confused, I'll just let it go. But I really think we ought to know explicitly what we're voting on.
I think this is different to when Bruce was here. We actually account for it in every column. Alderman Tyranny.
136.6.
Oh, do I have the floor? Yeah,
I was waiting for an answer.
Okay. Did he get his answer?
Colleagues, so I pass it over to the first one that had their hand up.
OBB. Alderman Arnett, this is just showing the math to get there. I don't think you need to. I mean, I trust the Finance Committee doing this math, and the net is the 25,000. That's the way I see it. You go. I mean, I would, yeah. So, but my question is.
But Ellie, it's not showing the math, and that's my point. And in fact, we don't know what the math is. What we're being told is this is a $25,000 transaction. The reality is this is much more than that, and it's cumulative.
So if you recall,
no, it's not. It's no.
So
go ahead, Jerry.
So on last Monday we had several amendments, and we draft each amendment as if it's the only amendment affecting the bill, because we don't know which ones are going to pass and which ones are not going to pass. So today we brought to you Amendment 17, which brought those into alignment that fixed everything with the cumulative effect of all the amendments from last Monday. But tonight we're trying to save some time and not have to do a balancing amendment. So every time we bring these to you, we're trying to incorporate the previous amendments tonight that passed, so we don't have to do another balancing amendment.
But you understand that we weren't told that. So when we're trying to fly through and look at this math and we see differences, changes on page 4, line 3, that are not $125,000, immediately my mind asks, what else is in there?
All right, so I'll give you a sample. On page 4 in line 3, the difference between those two numbers you cited is $136,600. That is two components. The additional turnover that we added to transportation with the $161,600 that came from Alderman Savage's amendment from last Monday, we put that in there, and then we add this $25,000 amendment. Those are the two items that net together to make the 136. 36. So, I mean, we could go through every line item and tell you what the differences are. We're just trying to save time. We've gone through the exercise of making sure these are netting together correctly, and I hope we won't have to go through every line item for you.
So my question is, since we are voting on allocating $25,000 from the general fund to the transportation fund, am I correct in saying that we're really getting this from the parking fund?
No.
Okay.
No, it's coming from the general funds reserved for one-time purposes.
Okay.
We would set it up as a transfer to the transportation fund. Okay. And the transportation fund has an additional revenue source coming in and would increase their appropriations by $25,000 net to add the purchase, the capital outlay item for the purchase of the bus shelters.
Okay, and to respond to Alderman Arnett's, the COVID is just related to transportation needed in our state of emergency, et cetera.
And all operations, not capital.
Operations, yeah. Okay. Can I second this?
I think it's on the floor, has a first and a second. If there's more debate, I think, the votes are there for it, I'm guessing. Alderman Gay, do you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to quickly, before we take the vote, shout out Director Gordon for helping me out with this, because we really have been talking about it and trying to find the funding over the course of the last year. So I'm excited to have this.
Great, thank you, Alderman Gay. So everybody, we're going to vote on Amendment 23, Alderman Gay's amendment. With a show of hands, all those in favour of this say aye. Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no.
Motion carries.
Ayes have it. Thank you. On to amendment number 24. Alderman Gay's amendment number 24. Can someone please move this for the Alderman Gay show? We love you, buddy. Thank you. Alderman Savage is moving that. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Can you give us some clarification, please?
Yeah, so as Jody mentioned, this is the same exact funding source. And what it'll do is move $25,000 to the mayor's office salaries and benefits to pay for internships within the city department. So it'll be run through the Office of Community Engagement. Students will be able to apply, picking an internship specific to what they find interesting within the city departments. And it'll be good and it is also a way to put our youth in roles of city government. It also moved $25,000 to the mayor's office to enhance programs under the African American and Hispanic liaison, which I think is critical. We all acknowledge the work that they do routinely and through One Annapolis or through various programs that they create in meeting some of the needs of our communities. In particular, I'll point out the NOM program, which was extremely successful over the course of the last year. The amendment also adds $25,000 to the Office of Law to pay for legal interns, which I think is critical. Again, given the opportunity for disadvantaged youth to get experience in something in a field that could be life changing, potentially, and provide multiple opportunities. And then lastly, the amendment adds $50,000 to the contingency account to be used for local small disadvantaged businesses, enterprises, which is legislation that I'm working on with the Office of Law that would allow us to have a funding source for minority-owned and women-owned businesses in the city that find themselves going through difficult times or need assistance, helping stabilize their business. And this creating this funding source would start that, along with the ordinance that will follow.
Thank you. Alderman Savage had his hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, thank you, Alderman Gay, for introducing all these. I think these are good conversations to have no matter how the votes go down. But, in the case of this one, I do like the idea of the internships. I think those could provide some good opportunities for some local folks. But I'm a bit torn because I'm not so sure about the $50,000 in terms of being set aside for the disadvantaged business enterprises. I feel like that is something that perhaps should be coming out of our, I think, a different program. I was going to say originally community grants, but I'm not sure that'd be appropriate for that either. But I'm certainly open to that, but I'm still have some hesitation. And just, again, this is the first I've seen this, and I'd have to give that some more thought before I can support it. But if you have anything else to add, I'd certainly like to hear it.
Alderman Pindell-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions, comments. I think the internships program is wonderful. And I remember being an intern myself when it came to a public defender's office, and I really did it was extremely helpful. The one question I have, the $50,000 to the local small disadvantaged business enterprises, is that part of this contingency that we were talking about with Alderman Rodriguez, or is this okay, I thank you, Director Dickinson, thank you. It's not the same
thing. Say anything. It is not.
The other thing is, okay.
I was going to say it would be another force.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Ms. Dickinson?
It's not.
Could you repeat that?
Money from that was added to the contingency account before was the 135 from the previous cuts. This is coming from one-time money in our one-time reserve, and it's going there now into the same contingency account. But that's because we don't know where this would land, because we'd have to flesh out the program first to decide exactly which department it lands in.
With the internships money, is that the one-time pot of money you're talking about as well?
It's this whole amendment come out of the one-time reserve, and it's got these different pieces, and that piece would go to contingency until we decide exactly how that program would be fleshed out and where it would go in our departments.
Okay. The other question I have, Alderman Gay, do you have any clue, ballpark, this $50,000 about maybe how many businesses it would help? Are we talking about a $5,000 or $10,000? I mean, just a question about how many we could help. Yes.
Thanks. I don't have a exact number of the amount of businesses that it could help, but just kind of to speak to your point and Rob's in regards to the $50,000, what really prompted me to create and talk with City Attorney Lyles, who was great in pointing me to some specific legislation that helped with this, is that just realizing that a lot of the times our minority-owned businesses don't really receive the attention that they need to survive in the city. And there are, numerous stories that point to that. And I think that by creating this fund, especially as we look at post-COVID and, how some of the funding is being produced through the county, and they say it's getting all to our minority businesses, but I have owners of minority owners who have businesses within the city and saying they're getting none of those funds and they're struggling to keep their businesses, up and going. So this, coupled with that legislation, would assist down the line for those who needed assistance to kind of continue to have their businesses within our city. I don't have an exact number, but at some point I'd like to have City Attorney Lyles just speak a little bit more to the use of this specific legislation, if you could.
The other thing before Mr. Lyles, are we going to have some kind of system where who's it going to be through planning and zoning, where people apply for this money, or how have you envisioned how that's going to work?
Can I respond to that too?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Well, what I was thinking that Stephen would manage this funding if the legislation that would help pass the small disadvantaged business enterprise passes.
Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, sir. What we found in our offices, we've had several requests by staff and by council members about helping businesses in the disadvantaged minority and small business and local community. And what we have often responded is, you don't have a program, and thus you can't help them, right? So you got to have a program first. You have to, in other jurisdictions, they call it a local small disadvantaged business enterprise program. It's usually run out of an office. You can set it up however you want to set it up as a council. You can put it in whatever agency is necessary. We will continue to flesh out some legislation that makes sense. But in order to make certain benefits available to certain groups, disadvantaged groups within your locality, you do have to have a program, and you do have to have council meetings where you've pulled together historical information to help you assess and justify legally that this program is necessary. Once you find it necessary, there may be some small amounts of money for staff, paper and pencils and pens and office, because you will need to probably create some forms. You'll need to create some kind of certification program. That certification program can be modeled after the state or other jurisdictions, but you will need to find a way to actually determine who is disadvantaged. And then you can say what you're going to do to help them. And that money might be there in whatever percentage you want to have it there to actually do that. But right now, there is some interest by everyone, I think, on the council and in the city generally to help disadvantaged businesses. But because you don't have a program, you don't have legislation, you don't have it codified, you really can't do it. So this is kind of a way to help you do that. Get there anyway.
Great.
Alderwoman Terry,
Thank you,
and then
Mr.
Alderman
Lyles.
Rodriguez next, and then Alderman Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just two things. Unlike Amendment 22, this isn't very clear in writing of what the funding source is. I think I understand what it is, but it doesn't state that in the amendment as 22 does, because I know, Alderman Pendle Charles had a question on whether or not this came from the same bucket of money. But my second question or concern is, before I would vote on this, I would like to know what Hope Stewart thinks, because her title is Small Minority Business Enterprises, and that's her job. And I just feel a little bit hesitant in allocating this without her looking at it more deeper.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this amendment in its entirety makes a lot of sense. I think it's right. It's on point. It's coming out of like one-time funds that are available. Now is always the time to invest, especially this combines supporting our youth plus workforce development, plus small minority or disadvantaged businesses that don't get traditional usually support, as much support, or in terms of financing and fixes. I know other municipalities have a micro loan fund or a micro grant fund for businesses. that are successful, and that smartly will be defined in a subsequent ordinance. The projects that are done under the mayor in the mayor's office by the African American and Hispanic liaisons are outstanding and critical, and we can support the proposals and projects they have going forward as well. You know, as a recent law school graduate, I totally appreciate more opportunities for internships in the legal department. So I fully see the value and support in that as well. So I'm excited about this amendment. Thank you, Alderman Gay, and I'm obviously going to vote for it.
Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions. The first one speaks to what I think I heard Jody say about this contingency fund. Jody, did I understand you to say that this is the pot of money we will use if we have any sort of emergency in the course of the year? For example, if Snowmageddon comes.
Right. So, yes, the mayor's proposed budget has what we call a contingency account. It's in the finance non-allocated section of the budget. We start out the budget by putting $410,000 in it, holding that for possible snow emergencies, and, you know, clearing the roads and getting the ice off the roads. So that's typically what that's held for. It can be used for any contingency. Then in this process, we added the $135,650 to that same contingency account, but later the council can consider ordinances or resolutions to take that money out of that contingency account and putting it in a department for the Office of Community Caring. Then now this 50,000 of this amendment number 24 would go into that contingency account as well, with the idea that you would come up with this program for local small disadvantaged business enterprises. And then once that's done, come to council with an ordinance or resolution to move that money out of contingency to wherever it would be spent through, such as economic development. The rest of this money in this amendment puts money in the mayor's office of $50,000 for a couple of initiatives and some in the Office of Law for interns. So this is spreading out into different accounts, not just the contingency account. Just the 50 goes in the contingency.
So prior to this amendment, number 24, how much is tentatively unallocated out of that, what, 410, did you say?
When you say unallocated, the 410 is completely unallocated. We like to leave it there for the winter.
We haven't spent any of it through the course of our amendment?
No, we set it up every year in the budget with $410,000. This is for FY21, not FY20.
Okay.
It doesn't combine and it doesn't accumulate. Every year we set an appropriation with $410,000 in case we need it for snow or other contingencies.
Okay. My next question is for Mr. Lyles. Actually, the next two questions, really. Legal interns. Is this a request that you have, Mr. Lyles? Or how did this come about as a need for legal interns?
Yeah, it wasn't, it was a part of my original budget request very early on in our PowerPoint. After the council made its adjustments to the budget, or we were asked by the city manager to reduce our budget by 10%, we took that out. So you didn't see that in anything you received within the last 2 months, right? So, but I haven't asked anyone to put it back in. So Alderman Gay's insertion of it is appreciated, but was totally not requested by our office. But if it does come, we'll find a way to make it work in line with our original projections.
Okay. And I would like to know what your definition of small disadvantaged businesses are.
Well, that could be answered in two ways. First, I have definitions based on what other jurisdictions say, and I can give you that. There's a federal guideline, a federal statute, but the city has not itself made a definition, which is why you kind of need that before you go forward in this way. But small disadvantaged businesses at the federal level means those businesses that whose CEOs 51 or owners, 51% of the management owner of the business is from a ethnic group that has historically been discriminated against in this country, including African Americans, Native Americans, Hispanics, Asians, etc. Most of that comes from historical information that was provided to Congress to create the program, the Small Business Administration, as well as a host of other legislative initiatives that established minority groups needing special assistance in business areas. But most recently, jurisdictions have added small as well as local businesses to give them preferences and benefits based on them having ownership in your jurisdiction and wanting to help them over, say, a larger business that had a diffuse management and ownership outside of the city or the state.
Well, I guess, and serving on the Small Business Recovery Task Force, after, I can't say after COVID-19, but as we move through this reopening, we may have more than our share of small disadvantaged businesses. So we may need to think about how we support them. As a matter of fact, next Tuesday or Wednesday, there's a webinar for small and minority businesses to find out what it is that they need to help them reopen or be successful as they move into this new phase. So this is an area that is significant for everyone. And I think we as a city are going to have to rethink how we support our small and minority businesses across the board. So we should keep that in mind, that we have a task force that is working on helping all of our small and minority businesses. So thank you.
Alderman Tierney.
Yeah, I just want to segue into the fact that we don't have a minority business participation plan in our code as well. So this is a bigger, this is a big issue that let's have another work session. No, but seriously, we can look at other cities. I have talked to Attorney Lyles about this when I was working on the sprinkler bill, that we do need a minority participation language in our code. But we can always ask for that when we do an RFP. In fact, I think we do. If you're listening, Brian.
Okay, so we have a first and a second on Alderman Gay's amendment number 24. All those in favor of the amendment say aye with a show of hands. Aye. Aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
6-3. The motion carries.
Hello?
Jody?
Was that a vote on the amendment?
Yes. Should we do a roll call, Regina?
It was 6-3. The motion carries.
6-3, you sure? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, the 3 no's. But we can do a roll call, Mr. Mayor.
No, if you saw 6-3, I'm good. Jody?
Yeah, so we found a minor error in this amendment. We have to add a line for one of the subtotals. And so we're going to send you another amendment. Okay.
No.
So hold on. Can we recess for 15 minutes? And so we'll make sure we have everything.
No.
We will take a recess for 15 minutes. It's only, you probably all need a cup of coffee anyway.
Yeah.
And that's the last amendment. So,
We have a correction coming for this one. There was a line that we missed for a total. You have to change the subtotals and the totals, and we missed one. So sending you a correction to it, but we want to make sure we've incorporated everything so that we don't have another one coming. So let us have 15 minutes to finish our review for everything that's happened tonight, and then we can continue.
That's what this is, actually.
You're doing a great job. Doing a great job, Bonnie.
Regina, do I need a motion for that?
I was just going to say, are we going to recess until 10:15?
Yep. Do I need a motion for that?
No, you don't need a motion.
Okay, we are recessing till 10:15. Thank you very much. Special meeting of the Annapolis City Council on Monday, June 15th, 2020 will be called back to order after a recess. We left it. Jody?
So in your, we sent you a correcting amendment 24 that adds one more line item. Oh, I'm sorry, it's amendment 25 because you voted on 24. This just adds an extra line item to change a subtotal within the appendice, right? Okay.
Everybody has a copy of that or not, please?
Mr. Mayor, I think we need to do a roll call on the last vote because the count is wrong.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a copy. Jody, could I have it sent to my personal email, please? I don't have access to my city email.
What's the process, Regina, for Alderman Savage's request?
You want to do a roll call on amendment number 24? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
That's correct.
Can we do that now?
Yeah, we can because we didn't have a motion on amendment number 25. What?
Okay, what is the process to get it in order?
Before the result is called?
Well, we voted on it, it passed.
And the result was called. Oh, you did? You want to vote to? Okay.
Regina?
He can call a roll call just to clarify what the vote was. Because we haven't called another amendment at this time. So we can call a roll on amendment number 24.
And do we need to get a vote on that call?
I'm sorry?
Can you just call a roll call without it being voted on?
No, because I have to record it if you call a roll. So
Okay.
it'll show the vote in two different ways. It'll show that you voted on it with a voice vote, and then it'll show the roll call, and that'll, it show exactly how you voted, yea or nay.
Okay, and so
So Mayor Buckley?
in support of the amendment 24?
24.
Yeah. Yes?
Okay. Alderwoman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
No.
Alderman Arnett?
No.
Alderwoman Tierney?
No.
Alderman Payon?
No.
Okay. Alderwoman Pendell Charles?
Aye.
Yes. So it is 5-4.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to amendment number 25.
And that passed, correct?
Yes.
No, we're about to
Okay, all right.
bring it to the floor now.
Alderwoman Finlayson, did you get a copy of that?
I think I did. Is it 25? Is it just one line?
Yes, it's
Appendix A.
Can I have a copy of 25? Is it just one line? Okay,
Yep.
yes, it's just a one-line amendment to correct what we missed.
Okay, yes, I have it. Thank you.
All right.
Could someone move that, please? And
So moved.
all right, we've got a second, Alderman Rodriguez. Thank you. I don't think it's just a correcting amendment. I don't think there's any discussion. All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
The motion carried.
Motion carries. Thank you.
So I need to add something to the discussion at this point.
Yes.
We're not sure that we're balanced and we're rechecking it again. So you need to wait for us to make sure we don't have to do any more amendments. If we want to pass this tonight, we're going to have to make sure that there's nothing else that needs to be adjusted, okay? So.
How long would that take, Jody, do you think?
As long as it takes, hopefully a couple minutes, but I can't really say because we got to make sure it's right. There's not too much to look at. We're just going back over it.
Okay, let's make some small talk for few minutes here.
I have something to say. Yeah, first of all, I would just like to thank my colleagues and those who were aware of my situation on last Monday. Back on Memorial Day, my brother-in-law in Texas passed away. He was not married, had no children, and my husband was his legal guardian. So we had to do a remote virtual graveside burial wake from here. And then 2 days later, my aunt, my mother's sister in Jessup, whose funeral was in Jessup, passed away. So it was the same day. So I had to deal with my brother-in-law in the morning, and then I was a little late for my aunt's funeral and burial in the afternoon. So that's why I didn't get here until about 4 o'clock. And just, I mean, thank you all for being patient. When Dr. Olata was my direct supervisor years ago, and I had some issues in Texas with some family members being ill, and I remember the 4 words that he told me. He said, "Rhonda, family comes first." And I knew that, but it's always comforting to know when your supervisor tells you that when you're going through some issues. And now my mother's brother is in ICU down in Georgia. So we've kind of had a lot of family things going on, and kind of a week before all of this happened, my mother-in-law's first cousin passed away in Texas. So we've had quite a bit of death in the family over the past month. But thank you all for your thoughts and prayers, and I really appreciate you being there for me in spirit. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you, Rhonda.
I think I'd keep moving quickly if I were you.
Yeah.
And we go to Texas, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No, we were debating it, but it just wasn't feasible. And so, trying to do a virtual FedExing and calling and communicating, it was just nothing like I've ever had to do before. So that was pretty different. But we made it through. We got it done. And so we're making it through. So thank you all again.
And while you have the floor, Alderwoman Pindell Charles, the one Annapolis moving forward as we continue to reimagine a collaboration with public safety and public service, did you want that added to the record? Is that? Yes,
Mr. Mayor, I would like to. Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
And the money that there was a blank in there should be $21,000 plus salaries. Mr. Gerald gave me that figure later today from Sergeant Maguez, David Maguez. So it should be $21,000 plus salaries, which were not included. So thank you.
It's just into the record, right, Regina? Okay, thank you.
Alderman Gay.
Alderman Gay, I think, has something to say.
Alderman Gay.
Yeah, I guess I'll do it now to save us time. But I just obviously am very thankful first to Jody very much, because I was calling her up a storm the last couple of days since the weekend, really trying to get things prepared. So thank you to her and Katie and my dog T-Sizzle, Teresa, and the whole group for really just, helping pump some of this stuff out. And to the directors, Director Gordon for the assistance. Again, I want to thank him for allowing us to get the bus shelters. That was critical. To Ross for helping me get the amendment together for the Stanton Center. I literally called him and we talked through it in like 5 minutes. So I'm thankful that he was able to help that. Just the team in general. This was my first budget. You win some, you lose some, but you take what you can. So I'm going to take it and we'll be back next year.
Ed, you're next.
Can I go home? Oh, that's right. I am home.
Click your heels.
I'd like to thank Mr. Gerald for a fantastic job that he did both before the budget came out and since it has. It's his first go around also. And I appreciate the time and the effort that he's made to, try to make everybody in the whole world, it seems, happy. His department heads, the council, the mayor, and I think I think he did a very incredible job and is deserving of our thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Pound, while you have the floor, and just so I don't take it personally, you didn't vote for any of Panlidis' budgets either, right?
I think one.
Oh, okay. That's my goal in 4 years.
Hey, Gab, Mayor Buckley.
I might have voted for two. I can't remember, but I know I voted for one.
Wait.
Okay. I heard different, but Alderman Tierney?
Yeah, since we're doing, shout outs, I really want to give a shout out to Katie Connolly. She's a real underdog in the finance department. You never hear much from her, but she really keeps things in order, and she's totally responsible for the capital budget. And I also want to congratulate Dewan. He really was a rock star tonight and put it all together. And sorry I didn't vote for the interns.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, on me go.
If I could really quickly, I hate to do this to y'all, but I just thought of something. We didn't amend to pull the $346,000 from the CIP for the substation. So if we vote on this budget in its entirety, that will move forward, correct?
I'll get some clarification from Jody.
Okay.
Wait a minute. The answer is no. No. Just kidding. Come on, Dewan. You can crack a smile. I was only kidding.
Thank you, Garnier.
So, Jody, are you on the line?
Yes, we're not, we haven't figured it out yet. We're looking for $25,000 to make sure we have the numbers right. So it's just something that we've done with the adding and subtracting that we're out by. That's what we've got to get it right.
Can I ask you a question?
That's Mr. Lyles, that's Mr. Lyles' interns.
There was a lot of 25,000s in these last couple, so we're just trying to see where we might be off.
Can I ask you, Jody? Alderman Gates' question was, he had pulled the substation was Alderman Gates' initiative. He wanted it pulled. Maybe you can give some clarification, Alderman Gay, on the substations, because it doesn't seem like there's adjustments in this, or is there?
No, the police substation is still in the capital budget. As it was from the beginning. Nobody's put any amendments out there to remove it.
Maybe David Gerald, is there something we can do?
I hate to even suggest that you do another amendment. Yeah, I mean, we can.
Good to don't.
Yeah.
Could we?
Well, it doesn't have to happen tonight.
We can defer the project and take it out next year. I guess there's a lot of things we can do. We cannot move the project forward if there's no interest.
Well,
you can formally take it out, or we can informally just not move it forward and take it out next year.
Can we defer it by not affecting anything now?
Correct.
Yeah, we could just do it at another time. Kind of like we had to amend the CIP to update the pool numbers and the new public works building. So we could do the same thing with this.
So I like the deferment idea. Alderman Arnett.
Yes, I think I have an awful lot of my constituency, particularly around there, that would be very upset if at the very last second, without any possibility of input, we took that out. I'm not particularly sure that that's going to work. We've done it before and it didn't, but that's what the constituents want us to try, and I think we shouldn't mess with it, and particularly not without giving them any kind of fair notice that that's under consideration.
Alderman Gay had his hand up, and then Alderman Tierney, Alderman Pindell-Charles, you have your hand up? No, okay.
Just a quick correction. That's what his constituents want to try. I've had several in the last few days reach out and say they are not interested in being in any semi-police state. So if he's saying that it's filled previously with a verbal deferment, then no.
Okay, Alderman Tierney.
Yeah, I think I have to say something. David, City Manager Gerald asked us all for items for the capital budget, and I had attended, maybe 3 to 4 town halls after shootings, and it was clearly heard. And perhaps you're right, Alderman Gay, from the Eastport community, but it was clearly heard that they were looking for some kind of police presence. So my idea that I sent to the city manager was a fit out of some sort. In fact, that's all the money can do. It's a square foot cost to fit out something. I even envision having something maybe in the shopping center until it's developed to have this presence. It wasn't, that's not like a standalone police station. And then when it got on the capital budget, I think there were conversations with HACA saying, well, we could just, use a building, in Robinwood or something to have this, I think of it more as an office, but, with this now atmosphere of police presence, I can see where, you want to revisit it. But I just thought I'd say that was the genesis of it, because I clearly heard it from these, at these town halls they would feel more comfortable with some kind of a presence, or closeness, like, specifically, one constituent said, I just want to know that they're nearby, that kind of thing. So that's where it came from.
Alderwoman Finlayson and then Alderman Gay.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for your commitment to the Office of Community Caring. The idea came, I guess, with Ross and Dewan, and it has grown to now we actually, after the budget is struck, will have several $100,000s of dollars, it appears, to help us get that office up and going. And that's separate and apart from the COVID-19 money that I hope that we're going to be getting. So thank you. And we still have a lot of the details to work out, but I have every hope that it's going to meet a lot of the needs, a lot of the social needs that we are lacking in our city. And secondly, on next Wednesday, the 25th, I'm hosting a town hall on the theme of where do we go from here? And our special guest will be none other than Mayor Gavin Buckley, Police Chief Jackson, Alderman Dewan Gay, and Alderman Mark Rodriguez, along with representatives from the NAACP, the ACLU, a few community organizations, to begin to look at really how we move forward, and not just with the COVID-19 impact, but with all of the racially charged issues that are surrounding our country today. So I invite all of you, I can't have all of you on because that'll be 5, but please feel free to join us and call in and,
Excuse me, Alderman?
give us your ideas and spread the word.
Alderman?
Yes.
It's the 24th. You said the 25th.
It's the 25th, isn't it? Wednesday?
The 24th is what we set.
Okay.
That's what's on the calendar.
Wednesday, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
So it will be on Facebook Live, Sheila? Facebook Live, so we can like you?
Yes. Julian,
Yeah, okay.
Is that how it works? You have to talk to Julian.
Say again?
Is it on Facebook Live?
It will be, yes.
Will it be on YouTube Live?
This one, I think it will be, yes. I have to look at what's going on that day and make sure that there's nothing else happening. But
Okay.
we should be able to do that fine.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. Shout out to Lynn too. I don't know how I can forget her. Shout out to Lynn. I love you in the back. So with the David, I just needed to get a firm yes or a better understanding of what's taking place with the verbal deferment. That is a possibility, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So it takes a lot of positive energy to get these projects moving, and it's really easy to not move them forward. What I would suggest is that we move this one forward a little bit so we get some consensus on whether it's going to continue to move forward or not, because it sounds like there's two camps on either side of this project that we need to sort out. So we would need to see if there's another location other than one of the Hackett properties, and what the costs and what the implications of that would be. So I would suggest that we move it a little bit towards the conceptual stage and then have a community discussion about whether it moves forward or not.
Okay, I appreciate that very much.
Well, I have some good news. We found it, but we're doing another corrective line. It was one of the total lines that we didn't incorporate all the $25,000 items that we had. So we're sending that to you shortly. They're typing it up right now.
Thank you.
I'm sorry this is such a technical process.
We like it that you're a perfectionist, Jody. Thank you. That's what you want.
We gotta make it balanced. If it was up to me, I'd just say, let's just say what we mean to do and then we'll fix it later. But no, we gotta get it right tonight. Otherwise the ordinance isn't correct.
What's the discussion at this week's work session?
I'll have to check that with Regina.
The Board of Supervisors of Elections have some legislation they would like to talk to you guys about. That's on the agenda, and Sally has an item on the agenda, and I'm not sure exactly what that is. But you will get it tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
This is Amendment 26.
I think so.
Fred, your wife's calling.
Yeah, no kidding.
Put myself on mute.
Fred?
So I believe they have emailed you the correcting amendment 26.
What happens to 25? Do we still have to vote on that as well?
We did it already.
I thought we did. That was another correcting amendment, correct?
But I didn't think we voted on it.
Yes.
Regina, can you add me as a co-sponsor on this? I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Wow.
You really know how to stick your neck out there, don't you, Rhonda?
Okay, could somebody please move amendment number 26?
So moved. So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Correcting amendment. All those in favor say aye with a show of hands.
Whoa, can't we have a discussion? Is this for $150,000?
So on the previous two amendments, the 23 and 24, these were the ones that Alderman Gay introduced and was using one-time money. And when we did that, we had 23, which added 25,000. We had 24, and that added 125,000. But we failed to add the first 25,000 from Amendment 23 to that total. So this makes it the full 150,000 to balance all amendments.
And I don't believe we voted on 25.
Yeah, we did.
We suspended the vote.
Yeah, we voted on 25, 9-0.
It's late, Ross.
Well, I know I didn't vote for 24 or 25, but that's okay.
Regina?
Alderman Gay, Alderman Arnett has an item on the work session agenda about traffic in Ward 6 for Wednesday.
About traffic on Ward 6.
Yes.
Yeah, I have no idea what that is, but I move that we move all the traffic from Ward 8 to Ward 6.
I'm sorry, Ward 8. I'm sorry, it's getting late.
And Ward 8. Thank you.
If we move the traffic, do we get the dollars too? Amen.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have this on the floor. Amendment 26. Discussion is over. All those in favor of this correcting amendment, please say aye with a show of hands. Aye. Anyone opposed? Alderman Arnett and Alderman Paone getting us a little warmed up for the next vote for them. Okay.
Limbering up, boss. Limbering up.
Ready? keep those hands up. Is there a motion to amend O-16-20 on second reader?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Looks like that's. Do you want to do a roll call, Regina, please?
Sure. Mayor Buckley?
Yeah. Yes.
This is on second reader as amended, right?
Yep.
Okay. Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez?
Aye.
Alderman Gay?
Aye.
Alderman Savage?
No.
Alderman Arnett,
No.
Alderwoman Tierney,
Aye.
Alderman Payon,
No.
Alderman Pendell Charles.
Aye.
That motion carried. This one is actually 6-3.
So I'm going to get Jody to give some clarification here if we vote on this. Is there a motion to vote on whether the amendments to 01620 are substantive?
Second that.
Yeah. So I just wanted, as far as the size of the entire budget, I would say these are not substantive, but that is for the council to determine.
Thank you. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll go on to the next. Is there a motion to adopt O-16-20 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Hold on,
Sorry,
we did that already. We're doing third reader.
We're doing third reader, Mr. Mayor.
Are we really?
01620 on third reader.
Okay, I'll take that back, sorry.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, is there any discussion?
There will be, once we get third reader on the floor. Is there a motion to adopt O-16-20 on third reader?
So moved. So moved.
Second there from Rhonda, thank you. Discussion, Alderman Payon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you rightfully surmised, Mr. Mayor, I will not be supporting this budget. Although there are some things about it that I liked and agreed with, and I certainly think that the department heads and everybody concerned put in some pretty major effort. But the budget that we have is not balanced. It's illegal. Every definition that I found, I checked 4 dictionaries to say nothing of sources online, and they all indicated that a balanced budget is one where the expenditures do not exceed the revenues. We don't have that here. What we have is a budget where the expenditures do exceed the revenues. And furthermore, the way we are taking care of that is taking money out of one of our funds, in effect savings account. It's not called that, and it may or may not get interest on it, but it's reserved money. And it doesn't alter the fact that the expenditures exceed revenues. Just because we have enough money to pay all our bills does not mean it's a balanced budget. And as of right now, as far as I'm concerned, the budget is illegal. And furthermore, the second reason I'm not voting for the budget is that I have to say that the absolute, what I consider to be a lack of empathy for the public in these troubling times is disturbing, to say the least. The failure to make budget cuts when so many were available, and so many people are ill or so many people out of work, I find to be appalling, to say the least. It was made to me, the council collectively, nobody individually, this is not personal, but we didn't show the intestinal fortitude that would have made the cutting the 1.5 whatever, going with the constant yield motion should have been an easy one this time. This is something that we normally do automatically, but given the economic times, that should never have happened here. We have people getting laid off, people getting furloughed. And what do? We go along with increasing their taxes. I don't understand. One of my colleagues that we all know, and he happens to be from Ward 8, has said for years that there's going to come a time when we are going to need to make tough decisions that maybe none of us want to make. Well, this was a year that called for that. And I think we did not do our duty, in my opinion. As Alderman Arnett said earlier this evening, that we can't keep doing the exact same things and expect a different outcome. And that's what we do with the budget every year. Come next year, a number of us will be crying wolf all over again, like we do every year, that we're behind in the budget. We're going to either have to raise taxes, we're going to have to make cuts. And the reason we'll be doing that is because we didn't do that sort of thing this year when we had every opportunity in the world to do it. This is not to begrudge our city manager for having the department heads make numerous cuts from what would have been their request. I appreciate his efforts. And I think it saved us from an awful lot more work. And, but I just I don't get it. I think I cannot vote for this budget. I don't think we have at all thought about the tax-paying public in passing this. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Alderman Peon, Alderman Savage.
If you really want to know how I feel.
Yeah, I'm voting no for different reasons. And I do think we have a structural imbalance that needs to get addressed. And I think this balance, while it's balanced overall, this budget, because of other funding sources and other transfers, but overall our expenditures and our staff costs essentially are still higher and growing much higher than our revenues. This is something that we absolutely need to address soon. And I hope we can have that conversation over the next year. But that said, I do commend our staff on overall balancing this budget. We have had to make some cuts. I think we should have made some more. But as I've said before, my big issue is with the unions who, again, have refused to make any kind of sacrifice. Instead, our taxpayers, our constituents, during this time of record unemployment, have had to pay more in taxes. And they're the only ones making a sacrifice, and pretty much that increase is going to pay for about 3 pay increases in many cases for, 2 pay increases if you don't count the hazard pay for city employees. And so again, I think that's wrong. I could have easily supported the mayor's original budget, and I do commend the mayor and city manager Gerald on that original budget because it had the 6-month deferment, which I think was a reasonable compromise but apparently, obviously the unions did not share that view. And so I'm really ashamed that they have refused to see the wisdom in doing a compromise like that and sharing the sacrifice and in honoring those who are unemployed and to prevent what's very likely in terms of layoffs that may have to happen next year if things get worse. So that's why I'll be voting no. And thank you to the finance director and everybody in the office for your work on this budget.
So I want to thank Jody too for delivering us a balanced budget. You did do that. I might disagree with Alderman Peon, but thank you. I want to say thank you to Alderman Gay. So we love your passion. And it's been exciting to go through this with you. But we need to call the roll here. Regina, third reader. Charles.
One comment. This was Alderman Gay's first budget, and this will be Alderman Rodriguez's last budget. So just kind of bringing it all full fold. So thank you both.
Right. Okay, Regina, please.
Yes, sir. Mayor Buckley.
Yes.
Alderman Finlayson.
Aye.
Alderman Rodriguez.
Aye.
Alderman Gay.
Aye.
Alderman Savage.
No.
Alderman Arnett?
Alderman Arnett?
You said no? Alderwoman Tierney?
Tierney?
Aye. Aye.
Alderman Payon?
No. No.
Alderwoman Pendell Charles?
Alderman Pendell Charles?
Aye.
The budget passed 6-3.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Did it?
Was that 6-3, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. I'm going to give you $26.30 for that increase that you got. Right. Okay. We're going to you pretty soon, Fred. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
The agenda is completed, Mr. Mayor.
Is there anything else for good order?
Mr. Mayor, before anybody could bring anything else up, I'm moving that we adjourn.
All right. All those in favor with a show of hands say aye. Thank you all for your hard work.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Jody.